Test. You gonna call him or? Yeah, Justin has them, so we should be here any moment. The comments, yeah, he has the agenda packets and the other printed comments that came in before that one.
We don't have any dip. We don't have any dip.
Are you looking for an agenda?
Yes, I would be down there.
Even though everything's falling apart, we don't have any dip. We can make collapses upstairs. No hands, no wash.
Do you need a hand on? I'll be there early on Saturday.
Okay, great.
Is that all right? Okay.
Yeah.
Pardon?
We're gonna tell you about it, it's a CRA thing.
Yes, I did with one of your members. You asked him how it went. Say he's deep in thought over there. He should be.
Yeah.
Nothing is simple.
Yeah.
What?
You know the 5-minute rule? Within 5 minutes.
He's the new guy. So.
Yeah, I'll leave that to know the 5-minute rule. You should.
Oh, okay, I'll slave it.
Slingshot, they'll call that street house slingshot, you're right.
That's one way to put it.
I can't keep up with me, let alone you. Okay, so we got all the plates?
Yeah, I don't put that.
Another one? I don't know. Did you need another one or do we just need this one?
I don't know. Okay. Cool. So that's it.
You did my son's ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were good. That was quick thinking.
Yeah.
The Zoom is up, it looks like. We got Maria, we got Bill, we got Linda, we got Neil. Okay. Well, looks like we have everyone minus Tom, at least, and he's on his way. So why don't we get this special meeting under order? Nova, if we could have a call to order and roll call, please.
Sure. Commissioner Burling,
Yes.
Commissioner Brzezowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Mickey,
Yes.
Commissioner Sowers,
Yes.
Chair Myers.
Yes.
All are present.
Okay, thanks. So we're not going to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
No, for the record, I would like to mention the following steering committee members that are here. We have Donna Jett on the audience, one of the steering committee members. I believe that's Linda Smith on Zoom, Bill Teomina, and Maria Sutherland. So we have 4 of the steering committee members are present.
Is anybody
Public
else's monitor not working?
Mine's not working.
Not working, not working, not working. Kelly?
Mine's.
Okay, that's fine. Just
Can you do
double
something
check.
on that?
It's fine. I just was double checking. We're fine. Well then,
Public appearance.
we'll just jump right into public appearances. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern, not on the agenda during public appearances. Each person's comments shall be limited to 3 minutes or as otherwise established by the chair. Matters not appearing on the agenda will not receive action at this meeting and may be referred to staff. Persons are not required to provide their names, and it is helpful for speakers to state their names so they may be identified in the minutes of the meeting. Okay, so is there anyone from the public that would care to speak? First, look in the chambers here. I'm not seeing any hands shoot up in the air, so then we'll take it over to our Zoom and,
Neil Cruz.
okay. Go ahead, Neil, you're actually on.
Is my mic working now? Can you hear me?
Now it's working.
Okay, thank you. Listen, I'm new to the work that you are doing with the tree survey and this work. It has recently been brought to my attention about the survey. And what I wanted to say, and I'm hearing things about changing the number of certain types of trees that we're going to have in the village and limiting perhaps, again, this is just hearsay. I'm sorry if I don't have the actual numbers, something like pine trees to 10%.
Mr. Cruz, this is Bob Harari. I'm sorry to interject. That is the topic on today's agenda. The public appearances are for topics not on today's agenda.
Okay,
We
Bob,
are going to be
thank
talking about the urban forest master plan and the tree survey. So it sounds like your comments might be more appropriate when we go to that topic.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Bob, isn't there a way of seeing it here instead of having our,
On the screen?
yeah.
I sent a message to Sebastian. I'm not sure how to make those monitors turn on, so hopefully we'll get that up in shortly.
We'll grin and bear it. So anyone else like to make a public appearance? I don't see any other hands up, so I'm going to go ahead and close public appearances and then get right into order of business. Orders of business are agenda items that require city council, board or commission discussion, debate, direction to staff, and or action. And today we have one order of business, the review and approval of the final community survey for the urban forest master plan. Can I turn that over to you, Justin?
All right, thanks, JC. So, right before I started, this kind of all was getting going, and we had the meeting in mid-July with Davy Tree, where we were talking about the first public meeting, informing everybody about the urban forest master plan and the community survey. And it ended up, we had some questions, and we kind of you guys wanted to discuss it a little bit more, so here we are, and there's a list of 19 questions, including several 20 questions, sorry, 19 excluding the location question. And with the number of questions that both I and Davy Tree deemed necessary. So the remaining questions, and we just want to see what you guys think of the questions and what should ultimately make it into the final survey so we can get it ready to send out and start getting feedback.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone from the commission have any questions about the information that Justin's presented to us right here? Kind of understand what it is that we're supposed to do?
So I guess when we were at the end of last week's sort of last board meeting, we talked about the fact that we felt that 20 questions seemed like an overbearing number of questions for purposes of trying to get a responsive survey from residents. And we talked about going with 12 or something like that. So is that what we're kind of picking up here? Is there the 12 that are in here, and then we've got the additional ones that up to the 20, and we're just going to figure out whether we need more or what? Or
No,
just...
not necessarily. It was more of the 12 were what we felt was core necessary, and if you guys wanted to add or subtract these other ones, that, and then what order you want them in, stuff like that.
I don't think that 12 is too many. I don't think 20 is too many because they're simple ones. I think we want to cover what we need to cover on this one questionnaire. And
Well-
I don't think anyone is thinking, I mean, knowing some of the Carmel people, I don't think they'll think, wow, that's too hard.
Okay, and that's obviously what we're here to discuss.
Exactly.
So again, just for clarity, what we're trying to do right here is, in terms of what Justin has presented to us, is there any questions about the material that's here? So the direction that I see us having to do is to review and approve the questions, to determine the start date and end date of the survey, and then to provide guidance regarding paper copies for our citizenry.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And kind of, where should they be dropped off? Should they go to city hall? Should they go to public works? Kind of all that
Okay, and
minutia.
So before we go question by question, could we first talk about whether there are any perceived gaps in the content of the survey? Because I think there was one comment, I had sent some red lines in to Tom, but I felt like in the survey as written, we didn't address like scenic views, ocean views as it pertained to trees, and so there were a few questions where I had added like a scenic beauty to number 4, etc. So instead of going question by question, I guess I'd just like to talk about are there any content gaps that you should be looking to include?
Mr. Chair, if I may answer that question. So maybe two things. One, to clarify the number 12, as Justin was saying, 12 is the number of questions we have in bold that city staff and the consultant feel very strongly we need to have these questions to do the urban forest master plan. So unless there's a clear, compelling reason to change or delete them, we would strongly suggest we leave those in. The other 8 were based on a lot of people submitting potential questions, including Commissioner Brzezowski and others. So we got a whole lot of comments. I don't know, 50 or 100 potential questions. And I think one of the things that we decided to do, working with Davie Resource Group, we wanted to make it so that it would be easy for the citizens to fill out, because if it was 50 questions, probably many people would, shy away from it and not fill it out. We wanted to make it anonymous. We wanted to make it just simple, easy, straightforward, and to solicit the most possible response. So that was the goal. So we did get a lot of comments and suggestions. Predominantly Tom, working with Davie Resource Group, narrowed that down into 20.
Yeah.
So we have we'll call it the Holy 12 for lack of a better term. And then the 8, which were kind of like, there was questions, there was the same essence of questions 3 or 4 or 5 different times from different people. We try to coagulate them into like one question and simplify it.
Ooh, good
so there's
word.
a lot of people's questions, but not everyone's comments and questions are in here. We have to draw the line somewhere. But this is the opportunity for the commission to say, gosh, we're missing a few more, or these 8 are lousy, or whatever,
Or just revisions to what's here.
or revisions to what's here.
But your first 2, for example, are, I think there was some proposed alternatives to number 1, which is bold, and then in the public comments that we got today before the meeting,
Right.
those 2 questions were also addressed in public comment, right? And I think the first 2 questions are, they're a little bit broad and very subjective, right? So I just wonder if we could work on the language of those first questions.
I think all of them are broad and up to the way a person's, we can't be, you can try being more specific, but I think everyone knows what too few or too many trees are, and
just
reduce
part
the
of
canopy tree part or not. Seems to me it's simple.
part of what we're trying to get is how people feel about trees and what the the overarching opinion of trees is in the community going forward now and for the next 40 years. So, they do kind of need to be broad, wide sweeping, and feeling kind of questions, opinions that subjective questions, but there might be a few things. That's what we're here to debate and discuss.
So, having looked at a few of examples of some like kind of best-in-class examples of urban plans in other cities, and reviewed what their structure looked like. Certainly this community engagement piece, which is what this is about right here, how the kind of takeaway that I got, and maybe I'm interested, Commissioner Kelly, what the gap is that you're missing. But the takeaway I got was this, as I jotted them down. So, in terms of how you're reaching out to community for community engagement, what do you think of the current state of the forest? And I think it's important. I think it's important that here we're actually talking about the canopy, so that it includes not just the trees, but everything that's a part of what is our entire forest, right? And I just for clarification, I think that's important. Then, what do you think of the current forestry activities? So how are we doing, right? Then it was, what's the most and least concerning piece about the urban forest? Again, asking community engagement, right? And then the last two, does the forestry represent the community? So are your actions representative of what the demographics and what the residents really want, right? I think that's important. And then the last was, hey, as a community, what is your level of engagement? What do you want to do? How do you want to participate? And I think that's a great question, and hopefully through this survey we're finding out. And I think you guys hit that. And if you hey, would you like to be a steward? Are your trees important to you? Those are those are big, good, engaging questions. And how do you intend to be a part of the solution, right? Mm-hmm. As we take this forward another 40, 50 years.
Are you talking about the 8? Are those the 8 questions that they wanted?
Well, these are, again, I was just referencing having reviewed the best-in-class. I don't know if you happen to look at those that were provided to us a few sessions ago, but gave us an opportunity to go look at some best-in-class new plans that have been put in place in big cities like Boulder, for instance. And the takeaway was, this is my takeaway, that this is what they were going after.
I like Bob's idea of going to the 8 that you for sure want, and
12.
changing whatever we want on those, or adding something or not.
To clarify, 12, the holy 12.
The holy 12 don't have to stay holy.
They don't have to stay holy.
A few words.
Bad term. 12 that are in bold, how's that?
Yes.
The 12 that are in bold, and then the 8 that are
And then
best
a couple
guesses, but
others
that's
that
why we're
weren't
here.
there-
That's why we're
weren't
here.
there at all.
Yep.
So can we start with the 8?
However the chair wants
Is
to.
that
Tamara, did you have any questions for Justin before I think we want to open it up to make sure that those that are here participating in terms of the steering committee might have some comments and questions we can engage together. But you're okay? Okay. So with that in mind, I want to make sure that we're opening it up to those that are participating. And so if by hand you've got a comment as we discuss and go through, as Commissioner Bering has suggested, if we take it from number 1 and work our way down, if that's fine with everybody else, it's here. And
of the 8 starting, and then...
Well, there's 12 that, again, are in bold.
Oh, there's 12 in bold? I think so.
12
The holy
Oh, I
12.
was believing you.
12 in bold, AKA holy, 8 not in bold, AKA open-ended.
So if that's okay with everyone here in chambers, and that, by the way, certainly opens up to those of you that are in chambers, and if you have some comments and you'd like to participate, then please come up and to the microphone, and we'll acknowledge you so that we can engage you in this as well. Question number one, it sounds like number one and number two are already under, there were some questions, could they be combined? I believe there was some suggestions around that. Are they too vague?
There was a feedback on one or two, just as a matter of record that came in today.
Correct.
On these, just
To me, though, they
Steering
really are different, because upper canopy just means the trees that are the pines and the cypress and what's the other, and any firs, I guess, redwoods. So I think they're two separate things.
Well, the 36% of
Donna's
the
not even-
trees
not
is
even-
the trees, whether they're upper or lower case
Yes.
canopy, right? So
Yeah.
they're covering all the trees that we're talking about in the context of the canopy.
But then, because there's this feeling of a lot of people that we should have upper canopy trees, and then there's a whole bunch of people who are against that, I think that needs to be a separate I think it clarifies for us where people.
Kind of what I'm reading these two is I feel number one is, what do you think is going on right now? Like if you looked out the window, are there enough, too many, not enough? And then the next one is kind of going forward, what should we do to maintain that, alter that, or keep that?
Okay.
I think
That's my justification for liking those two together.
I think we need these, I mean, that's changing questions totally as I understand it. I don't know, somehow other people.
I didn't have any issue with the first two questions. My concern was that I felt like this survey as written does not include any recognition of the by the sea part of our community, and there's an opportunity to introduce, for example, I'll just jump in at question 4. What characteristics do you? The only place that where view or the beach or the ocean is included in this survey is as a disadvantage, as opposed to an opportunity for trees, right? So things like, for example, that you appreciate, right? That we have,
Guess we can't stand
we
one
have,
and two.
I don't know if you want to call them iconic trees or trees that allow, right? Scenic ocean
You
views,
do
for example.
my,
Cypress trees and scenic,
Right.
classic example. I mean,
Right,
do
we have
want
scenic-
those
we
or do
have-
not want those?
Right, so I just feel like there's opportunities to integrate our by the sea part of our Carmel in the survey across a couple of questions that would be useful to gain community input on.
Okay, so
But
just,
we can just take those up as we go.
do we have consensus
Question
then
by
on
question.
1 and 2 that we're happy with the way that they're written and we'd like to leave them in amongst is there consensus around that? Because Justin, our forester, the way in which he explained it, and I, again, going back to kind of the best in class, like what the reasons are, we're trying to get this community engagement, address the current state. What do you feel like about the current state? And then second, then what about the future, right? So you're suggesting these address both. And is everyone in agreement with that? And are we okay to move on into? Yes, and just for consensus, just looking out to the steering committee's extended members, is there some consensus around that? Is there any major opposition to what's there in 1 or 2?
Donna had nodded earlier.
Can I ask a question
I
about
see.
it?
Oh, yeah.
Is there a breakout into upper canopy and lower canopy?
Yes.
That-
Meaning in
It's
these
not in the
questions?
question, but is there something that could be added to it? 'Cause I think some of our questions, and it goes back to views and being in Carmel-by-the-Sea. A lot of these upper canopy trees are eclipsing, I think, a lot. So I would be curious as to what the breakout is, if we have that information.
I mean, we have the information, but that was not necessarily what the question is about. It's just kind of trees in general. But,
That's-
yeah.
That's what I'm curious about. So I don't know if others might feel that. Just that's something, because to quantify 36% and sort of try to get a sense. I'm just curious what the breakout is, if that's, and if we wanted to add that to the question, or,
No, I don't think so. I think this is clear.
the 36%.
It was in
Because
the,
what you're saying, Tamara, is right now it's saying we have a little more than a third tree canopy covered. You're saying the mix of upper and lower canopy is relevant as it pertains to total canopy.
I think it's relevant to how we might want to proceed in the future. Do we want more lower, more upper? I mean, how do we?
That's part of the question. Two is suggested.
I like where you're going with that, and I think that and perhaps this could be a place that in parentheses you break out, if you have that, what that 36%, what the breakout is and how it's made up of
we
upper
have
and
that.
lower.
I thought that was in their presentation. We have the data, it's in there.
Just
it's in the
maybe,
survey.
maybe that could be something that just comes here, and that perhaps we could have feel free to add in your last comments to those that are doing the survey, and then they might be able to make suggestions of what they would like in terms of a
Current
future
status is
percentage.
X amount percent
Yeah,
upper, X amount percent lower.
I do see a couple hands up on Zoom, so I believe Linda, I believe your hand was up first, and just for brevity of our meeting, best as possible, if we could keep all of our comments to 3 to 4 or 5 minutes max, please. I appreciate it. Thank you, Linda.
Okay, just on this third question, and those...
Oh, okay, well, can we just hang on? We're just on 1 and 2, so I just want to make sure we're
okay.
clear on 1 and 2. So how about you, Bill? Did you have something there?
Just a global thing, sir, and that being that we have life safety and the other things that relate to fire and falling trees as a part of a global understanding on every question, so that we don't forget not just the view is important, but people's lives and property is important. I just wanted to say that globally as we go through the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, but nothing related to 1 or 2 then. Okay.
Not specifically.
So it sounds as if we've got some consensus there. Let's keep going then to the third question isn't in bold, so that means that staff didn't consider this quite the holy grail of the holy grails, and a valued question all the same. And did we care to discuss this question? Is this a question that we would like to have included in this survey? Because, by the way, question number 1, if they're hoping that it's approximately 15 minutes to complete, if you got through question number 1, that took you about a minute, right? So question number 2, since there's numbers, now you had to start thinking about it. So now maybe there's 3 minutes in. We got some time. So how do you guys feel about question number 3? Is there anything, or can we keep going?
I wondered if it was any help to you, Bob, and Justin. If it's not any help to you two, I don't think it tells us much.
It's
Number
not
3.
of help.
Yeah, but figuring where people would like the trees, and if that doesn't...
Again, a lot of these questions originated from the consultant who are experts at preparing urban forest master plans for cities. Okay? Especially the questions that are not in bold have been modified by city staff based on a conglomeration of other people's comments. So, I mean,
It's not a help to you.
yeah, if there was 100 people, I guess what I'm saying, if there was 100 people in the room, there would be 100 different types of surveys.
Oh, I understand. But
So we're trying to narrow it down so that, again, the objective is easy to fill out, 10, 15 minutes to fill out, simple,
I understand that.
straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Linda, looks like we're on that question you had some comments about, so I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I just, the concern or the question I have regarding this question also concerns other questions of its type. If I were filling out this form, if I were a resident, just, filling out the form, I would have a hard time differentiating 1 through 6. They would all be 1 to me. And I think I'm probably not in a minority there. Just wondering if there's a way to repose that question so that, or is it okay if people just say 1 for, they want trees everywhere, for instance?
Got it. I think that's valuable, and I would tend to agree. Those of us that have chosen to live here are most likely choosing to live here in a big part because of the fact that it's an urban forest. So thanks for that comment.
You bet.
I think it would be unusual for the programming to allow someone to put 6 1s. Normally they'll want a 1 through 6. And they'll I mean, just as a matter of fact, it won't. Typically, a survey like this.
Yeah. Well, then it's possible that's why it isn't in bold. Yes.
I filled it out and I thought it was valuable because there is a number 6 on here for me. The rest of them.
Could you use the microphone, Donna?
Thank you. My name's Donna Jett. I did fill it out and I thought it was valuable because everyone lives on a different street with trees, no shade. And I have a number 6, and a number 1. So there were others in the middle. And number 6 for me is the mediums because I think they're a hazard for safety and at nighttime and people hit them and knock them down. So the 6 was easy for me. Now everybody else may have a different 6. But the other ones are important to different people at different times. If you have children and where you live. So I think it's a valuable idea to find out what's the most important. And that helps you with your canopy and your tree maintenance. Thank you.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Donna. Yeah.
I had one suggestion that we add in places where they do not block ocean views, or that could be reframed to say in places where they preserve ocean views is one of the criteria.
Okay, and sorry, where were you suggesting? In this
Question
particular
3.
question?
This
Okay.
particular question, adding a response in places where they preserve ocean views.
Okay, so preservation of just views or ocean only?
Preservation.
Preserve.
I put
How about
ocean
preserve
views.
views?
Pre-
How about
pre-
just
preserving views
How about
is-
views? Because
yeah.
people have different, they might want the
Yeah.
ocean or the mountains, or there's a lot of different views.
Yeah. So Donna brought up the safety aspect, and I think that, again, when we are reviewing this community engagement piece, we want to make sure that we feel that what the future of the state of our forest is to look like, that we're obviously putting safety first. I think Bill actually made the same comment. So just to make sure that as we go through the rest of the questions, that we do identify where that theme is there, so that we don't let that go. And because I'm with both of them, and I think probably the majority of us here, I think it's important. And it needs to be a part of what this new plan is going to look like. So are we on 3 saying that this is a valuable question? It's been kind of mixed. So a consensus from the steering committee. I've heard one, it sounds like, in support of it. I'm not really hearing from the rest. Is there any other comments about question number 3? Maria, you've got your hand up. I'll go ahead and please. And you're on mute, though. Maria.
There we go.
Oh, there you go. Hello.
Hi, thank you. I'm not sure it's that necessary. Our town is pretty small, and, I'm not sure that to differentiate between maybe downtown and the residential area, but otherwise, I don't think it's that relevant.
Okay, thank you. And any others?
If we are going to...
Sorry, go ahead.
If we are going to use this, though, I really object to the beginning of the statement. Trees and canopy have long defined the character of Carmel. That is simply not true. It's a part of the character. And if we want to say, have long to find, I'll get it over. Part of the character of Carmel, we can do that.
Or maybe just eliminate it. I agree, it's a little bit leading.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
To help us better understand, go to.
Yeah.
That's a good suggestion.
Right here with the commission, where are we with this particular one? It sounds like there's enough interest in it, and it sounds like there was a consensus within the steering committee. Oh, hi.
Nobody has a question.
Mr. Hand there, sorry about that.
Just another wrinkle. What about, instead of just 1 through 6, why don't you have a 7th, which says all of the above? In other words, people think that the forest and the canopy, et cetera, are pertinent to every place in the community, not just what you've listed. As an overall principle, not just saying this is good and that's good, but they're all good.
Understood.
They're all appropriate.
Yeah, and so I'm going to just kind of turn that back over to you, Commissioner Kelly, like in understanding how these work. So if you just had it all of the above, and you had, all you did is put a number 1 there.
It won't allow you to do that when you do a force rank program. You have to do a force rank, or it's one thing that you can do that's slightly different but may address some of the comments is you can have a more important, less important category, and you can let people tick box. So for example, you could have more important, less important as the choice, and so for each one of these they
Just
get to check more important or less important, more important, less important, and then you can get a better, then if someone thinks they're all important, right, they get 6 votes where they say more important, and then when you aggregate the data, you'll see, you know, does anything fall out, for example.
Like when you take a survey and it's like strongly agree, strongly disagree.
Yes,
Sounds like
except
that,
this
yeah.
is, it's basically, you give them, you know,
Just 2
more
answers.
important, less important, or, you know, in the middle. It doesn't matter. I can help you with the wording of that, but if you want to do that with this particular question, you'd get a bit more of a sliding scale.
What do you guys want to do?
Yeah, Mr.
Yes.
I appreciate Ms. Billings' comments. There's a lot of people in the community that want more trees everywhere. I think part of this, the purpose of the Urban Forest Master Plan or Management Plan is to help us better manage the resources we do have. So if I'm giving X number of dollars to plant new trees each fiscal year, and if they're all equally important, then I'm taking a guess. If the community says, you know what, let's really focus on putting more trees in the parks or whatever, as a random example,
That's a good point.
then that's where we'll focus the efforts. This doesn't mean we'll never do trees in median, well, it's another story, but trails or in neighborhoods. But it's, part of this is really a management guide for us, for our operations, and we don't have unlimited resources to plant endless trees everywhere. So where do we start? So I think that's part of the essence of the question.
So this might be helpful to you, yeah. So the idea would be we would drop that first
Sentence.
paragraph,
First
first
sentence.
sentence, excuse me, and then we would add place where they preserve
Yeah,
views.
we'll phrase that in somehow, right?
Well, okay, so let's just quickly review this,
Then
just
you'll
to make
force
sure.
rank. You can
that-
keep the force rank for your purposes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
that keeps it a force rank, and
Right. Right.
yeah, it's fine.
So that in mind, just to make sure that we as the commission have consensus on this, so we'll drop the first sentence from the question, and we're going to add the presentation of views as one of,
Yeah.
or sorry, not presentation, preservation.
Preservation.
Thank you. I know you looked at me like, what? So preservation of views. I mean, it's about to understand where trees and shade are most valued by the community. Not in front of my view, I guess, becomes one of them, possibly. And those will be a ranking as originally planned.
Okay.
Sounds like we got a plan on that one, so this one comes live. All right, and hopefully it doesn't take people as long as it took us to come up with this, or they ran out of their 15 minutes.
I wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're, sorry.
I'm sorry, JC. We were just saying that streets feels a little bit redundant in this
Okay.
list
You didn't wanna
because,
put them
so
in
I
the middle
would
of the street?
remove streets, since there's streets in downtown neighborhoods, right? Like it's kind of streets by itself. There's streets downtown, there's streets in neighborhoods, like that's where the trees would be.
But, you know, sometimes there's actually trees in the street.
But that's a median.
That's medians.
That's a median,
Oh,
right?
it becomes a median and it's just, it's in,
I mean,
there's something to run over.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Brzezowski.
Okay.
I think the word streets is doing more harm than good.
Okay, so we're just back down to 6.
Okay.
Next.
All right, and so 3 went live, so we've got 13 questions currently if we're going with the
Well, let's wait till
the staff's 12, right? And on to question number 4, moving right along. Hi, Sherry. Let's see. This one is recommended by staff. What characteristics of trees do you appreciate most? And it's another ranking, and one being the most valuable. I liked this one. I liked the environmental benefits, air quality. From my perspective, a couple questions around some of the architectural interest. I wasn't really sure exactly what that meant. Anyway, what's our thoughts? Do we have some thoughts around
Clarification, I think that when it's a term that say the architecture of a tree, so like a tree that, like the cypresses on Scenic, they're very gnarly and old, like the ghost trees. Like, do you like looking out at a tree that is really funky looking and a lot of different branches? I'm pretty sure that's what they mean by architectural interest.
Yeah.
Or a tree that grows around a house.
Sculptural interest,
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thoughts?
That's okay.
I heard okay. I got some nods yes from the commission.
I had one, was scenic beauty, right? I think, I don't know if that's the same as architectural interest, but you know, that we have a lot of iconic trees here, you know, the Monterey pines, right? The Monterey cypress. I just think that and we've, in that public workshop, iconic, like the iconic trees of Carmel came up as also being in tension with this desire to have way more species. You know, what part of the characteristic of Carmel is that we've got high percentages of similar species, right? So I think somehow integrating that. I also on this question would add the word in Carmel after what characteristics of trees in Carmel do you appreciate most? I think
And are we,
that's important.
sure. And we're Carmel-by-the-Sea on all of this? Yeah? Carmel-by-the-Sea.
Yeah, well, I think that's what I was saying, but it certainly wouldn't hurt.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I suggest instead of the term architectural interest, make it architectural interest / iconic trees?
Or aesthetic beauty?
Or scenic
Aesthetic.
beauty,
Scenic beauty, iconic trees, something like that?
Yeah.
Kind of all encompassing. That's supposed to split it
Do
out
we have
into
to
little parts.
do we need to define iconic? I mean, does it mean the same to everyone?
Or just aesthetic beauty? Like, I like the way the trees look, so I want more of them.
Yeah.
I
Iconic
think
doesn't really.
that scenic beauty, that concept of like scenic beauty or aesthetic beauty is different from ornamental and flowering,
Yes.
which is
I
the second
agree.
attribute, right? So
Oh,
I was
definitely.
trying to get that
Because you can
essence of
have,
scenic.
beautiful pines and cypresses, and they don't really flower, as
Right.
opposed to a cherry that's beautiful flowering. So,
Right.
do we want to add that? Sorry, just JC, if you want to take that. But do we want to add one more or add the aesthetic, scenic beauty to the architectural interest?
Yes.
Sounds like it kind of works together. Linda, I see your hand is up and you've been patient there. You had some comments?
Well, no, I was just going to agree with Justin. I think you could do architectural / aesthetic interest
And beauty.
or aesthetic interest because they do sort of go hand in hand.
Okay.
It's okay with me.
Yeah. Sounds like with some minor tweaks, that's the consensus looks good. So why don't we keep moving along? Linda, your hand is still up. Did you have another comment?
No, pardon me.
No, that's right. Just making sure. I don't want to miss out. The fifth question, describing your willingness to plant trees on your property. Check all that apply. This was not highlighted. The only thing I will say, if there's some head shaking going on, that's fine. Again, this, because this is a community survey and we are, I think hypothetically, wanting to have community engagement and trying to determine what level of community engagement we could get. I think there's some value to this question,
Yeah.
but I'm just going to leave that out there, open for discussion.
I think it's one of our more important ones, actually. I think we really need that one.
I do too. I actually just added, right now it says describe your willingness to plant trees on your property, right? I added describe your willingness to plant trees on your private property in Carmel.
Good.
And then I also added an option that says I don't own property in Carmel as a response because
Well, that's a good thing, that when
Yeah,
we get
because
further,
we get further, you get to say that, but
Oh.
for someone who doesn't own property in Carmel, they should be checking, I don't own property, because they're not a property owner. Their answer would be should be kicked out of this question.
Just out of curiosity, who's the actual official scribe on this as we're going through? Anova, is that you?
I have a red
We
line.
need to really.
I'm just making sure, because that was the objective here, is to have it.
Are you writing it
I
down?
have a
I'm
red
taking
line
the notes
version.
too. I'm taking
Well,
notes
that
too.
I
We
would
need
get
to
from
not have
Jessica.
notes, we need to have it exact. as
Well,
it's supposed to be.
Nova's taking the official meeting minutes.
Okay, just want to
I
make sure.
think myself and probably Tom are taking the specific comments back from the commission and the steering committee and the public.
Great, okay, just make
So,
sure.
yeah,
Just
I
wanted to make
think,
sure.
so far so good.
All right,
And
just
and we
making
know,
sure.
and we have your number.
Yeah,
Like,
well, you
what the
can,
heck are
I
guys
can't even,
talking
I can't
about?
even read my own handwriting, so. So then, anybody else on the commission that has some thoughts around this particular question? I'll be right with you there, Donna, 1 second. Yeah, I mean, feel free to come right up to the mic there. Tamara, or anything on this one? No?
I have a question. I guess I didn't quite understand. If you own a large business in Carmel and don't live here, do they not have the same right to vote the same way as if you do live here? Do they have to identify they don't live here when they have a vested interest? So that's why if you're going to send the survey to everyone who counts, that would also be business owner, that would be second homeowners, that would anybody who rent to owners who don't live here but they own the property. So that's my question, is if everyone has an interest who lives here or works here, do you want to discount them by saying I don't own here? I don't know.
I think Don.
They get it in the end, where they get everybody will get classified at the end of the survey, but in this particular question where they're asking, would you be willing to plant trees on your property? Right? It should be directed at people who own property, I think.
The owners.
The owners.
Owners,
Who
yeah.
own property, not
Correct.
just live here. But if you're a business owner who owns it and he doesn't live here, he still has a right to talk.
Well, and the businesses,
Yeah, hopefully they'll fill out the
the
survey.
properties in the city.
Like
usually
B of
have-
A or Wells Fargo, not B of A, Wells Fargo or someone like that, they don't live there, but they do own there. So I just wanted to be sure that the business
it's really
community is
residents.
involved too. Thank you.
And the residents are the ones that
Thanks.
are going to be here long-term most likely.
Maria, I see you've got your hand up, so over to you.
Yes, just a quick mention, I don't know if this is worth putting in there, but, you know, baby trees also require 2 to 3 years of watering. So it's not just plopping a tree in the ground. So I'm not sure if we wanted to elaborate on the process or just make it seem simple, like I'm planting a tree.
I think that's going to be your job. You guys do such a good job of that already,
Well,
at least telling us about it.
We
And
could say, I am willing to plant and care for trees.
Yes, or maintain, or, exactly.
yeah,
That's good.
okay, there you go. That sounds nice. Is there any major opposition to that? Doesn't look like it.
That's good.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. So, looks like we've got another question that got added back in, right? So, because that one just got added back in,
I really think it's
Is
not,
it-
no problem.
right?
The number.
That's okay?
Well, I mean, we're not, yeah, it's
So just-
the ones that.
We're up to
the-
5.
I'm just moving us
No,
along.
Yes.
yeah, no, we're up to 5. We weren't throwing the ones that
It's
they weren't out.
it's important that this is thorough, because we're not going to do it again for however many years, maybe
Hopefully,
ever.
yes.
And so to drop out too many questions, I mean, I don't think this would take most people more than 10 minutes.
Right, that's right.
And that's the
Even with
goal.
20
We're
questions.
and that's the other thing with the gut feeling kind of questions. We want to know, we want people to answer honestly and the way they truly feel, and so they can go through it fast and get the proper answers.
Okay, so moving on to question number 6. The trees growing on my private property are important to me, and it's essentially just coming up with an agreement or disagreement. Yeah,
It's fine with me.
I guess, it's pretty quick response. I don't really,
Do we have any properties that don't have trees?
Yeah, this is.
If-
I think so.
Because if so, it should say, you should add my property in Carmel does not have a tree.
I mean, technically it says I don't own property in Carmel with a tree, so at the last.
I think those are
okay.
so few.
Okay.
And there's not that many, really.
Okay, so
Just
few.
a-
Yeah, but
okay,
do you think that covers it?
No, that covers it completely.
so
It's
few.
really in
Yeah.
the section, it's the old mission track that doesn't have to have
Yeah, there's
trees.
not that many.
I'm not seeing any hands up online, and it looks as if everyone within the commission thinks that this one is a valuable question. So we're going to move on to number 7. The trees growing in the public right-of-way in front of my house or business are important to me. And it's the same address, either strongly agree or strongly disagree. Are there some thoughts around this that would want to change this?
We could add, I don't own property, or don't own a property or a business in Carmel, to be consistent with the other one.
Well, the businesses,
you're saying that-
businesses really don't have, very few of them have trees, except maybe the.
Oh, this is in the
Downtown.
public, this is in the public right of way.
Because it's city, aren't most
Never
of the
mind.
trees in the city trees?
Never mind, I have to read the
Never mind.
question first.
Okay. Is everybody good with leaving this one in? Doesn't look like any from the steering committee. Doesn't look to be any comments. Again, please just put your hand up so we can include you if you have some comments as we go through these questions, and open, of course, to chambers as well.
Mike, are we on 7 now?
We are through 7 and we're on 8, but we can go back to 7.
Yeah, because just, I think there really are a lot of people who don't have any city trees in front of their house. Should we have just a place I don't have city trees in front of my house?
Mm.
Well,
It just depends where the property line ends in some cases.
Or just, city trees on your block, like if you drive home and you see a tree,
Okay.
do you like it or do you not like it? You kind of just in front of my house or business is kind of.
So, in front of or near my house? Is that addressing kind of what you're saying?
That's fine. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay, in front of or near. Okay, we moved on to number 8. Nothing else? Wonderful. Are you satisfied?
Excuse me, go ahead.
Oh, no, you. What's up? Did we want to switch chairs?
No. I like you there.
Number 8. Are you satisfied with the current level of care that the city provides for public trees?
No. Oh, that's,
So this is good
I guess I'm not supposed
because,
to answer.
again, going back to the best in class, it's addressing what you think of the forestry activities, right? And hopefully at some point we'll be able to guide what the future of those activities look like.
right. I was meaning to ask Justin about this the other day, and something happened. Anyway, my instinct is that 99% of the people will say no. Was there any talk with Davie Resource Group about like a little caveat, based on the realistic level of resources and staffing, whatever? Are you satisfied? Because I don't think anyone's.
Satisfied, somewhat satisfied,
Yeah,
not
I
at all
agree.
satisfied.
Yes,
It should
yeah,
be-
but
it should be
maybe
a
not.
5-point, it should be a 5-point
Because everyone's
scale.
going to say no.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that
And
makes
that's-
more
It should be a 5-point
sense.
scale.
It's like my phone log.
Yeah, but I think
Based
even if-
on my phone log, the answer
even
will
if
be
you
no.
do a 5-point scale on this one.
Can we do that?
Highly satisfied to not at all satisfied.
That's good.
For the negative responses, I would do an
Why?
open-end response, free response, let someone type in. Because what you might find that it's just everybody saying, oh, there's too many stumps, right? It's not that they're dissatisfied with the department or the service, people are just tired of seeing like stumps. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So capturing
Good.
the dissatisfied negatives would be
Well, I
useful.
think if we're gonna do a survey here, I think it might be important to do a follow-on to this, because Bob and I were at the strategic offsite meeting, and one of the people in the audience had come up to me and says, hey, look, I don't know why we're doing a new urban forest plan, because the urban forest plan we have
already have one,
that sits
right.
today is fine.
That's Melanie.
The issue is that I don't believe that the city is committing enough resource to the forest in the context of a budget line item or something to support the needs of the city and the forest in the city. And so if you're going to ask this question, should we follow it with, do you believe that the city should allocate more resources to the care and the care of the forest, i.e. a bigger forestry department or more budget money allocated to the urban forest? And that way, at least we get an opinion from the residents. Are we spending enough money to support the forest we have? Because there's nothing like that in any of this, and I'm not sure is this the right place for it, but it is an opportunity to ask that question of the residents. Are you concerned about the commitment of resources to the forest as it sits today?
And so in terms of how we want to understand how it's going to shape the plan itself, and let's make sure we're connecting those two dots, right? So I mean, I agree. I think it's important to have an understanding of what the community feels like the resource allocation is, right? How does that impact the actual plan itself? I just want to put them together.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, part of the plan was they assessed our finances, our staffing, our equipment, our tools.
They're doing a full deep dive.
And they might be recommending, the plan itself might be recommending that based on the number of trees or this, we only have 1 square mile, but whatever, based on these parameters, we should have X number of field crews, X number, 1 forester, 2, whatever. So they're going to give us some guidance on that. So that is part of the overall plan. It's not just about what trees to plant or whatever. It's
great. And then
the
with the survey, you've got the community having responded and hopefully suggesting that they feel as if there could be a bigger spend. Got it. I think that's great, and I think we should add that in as another question. I would
question.
We do. I see we had
part 2 of 6.
We still have a few. We have at least one hand up. I think Maria got tired of having her hand up, and even though I know it's just a button you press, we've got you, Bill, with your hand up. So you have a comment about question number 8 and/or possibly this subset question.
Yes, it could be 8A, 8B, 8C, because I, for one, after this is over, I'm going to be proposing to the City of Council X $1 million bond issue to fix our streets, fix our stumps, fix all the above, and Carmel, which has been abused, and that's why people aren't coming as much as they used to, because Carmel is somewhat of a dangerous place now. You can barely drive your car. There's issues that are going on. So we need to talk and dig deeper into this whole funding of our budget line item. Justin shouldn't be begging for money, shouldn't be short of people like in Disney and in the Disney Resort, where I have many properties. We've made our own imposition of funding to keep our place perfect and to keep tourists being attracted. We need to do that in Carmel. Our trees are Disneyland to us. So I just want to emphasize that question should be expanded so that we can get a feel for how people feel about funding it relative to bond issue, line item budget, some other tax, but some way to fund it. So I just want to emphasize what staff just said.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it, Bill. So again, feels like 8 definitely addresses the what do you think of the current state, and then a second question to be plugged in after is it really addresses what do you hope to see in the future, right? And funding is a big part of that. So do we have a consensus around this addition?
Doesn't 10?
Let's get there and take a look at 10 and let's see, what do you appreciate most?
That's a different animal.
We could form it differently.
Okay, well, let's get there. When we're there, we'll be right there to it. Right. But that's just a good point to make sure it's not already in here.
Question: are we proposing another question?
We are.
And then, do you guys have wording for that in your mind, or how do you want to do that?
Brian, did you have a kind of a? Do you want to take a wordsmith at it, and then Kelly will correct you? In a positive sort of a way. She'll make you feel good about it.
I mean, it's really kind of a follow-on. So are you satisfied with the current level of care that the city provides for public trees? If it's a yes, then there's really no reason to reply to that. If it's a no.
I think we're changing that to a 5-point scale. So it will be, are you satisfied with the level of care? Extremely satisfied, very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, not very satisfied, or not at all satisfied.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then for the bottom 2 responses, they'll get a follow-on probe that says, please share why you responded not very satisfied or why you responded not at all satisfied. You'll get free text in there.
Yep.
And then you could do a follow-up that said something like, would you support additional resources and funding to increase city resources to whatever?
Well, that was asking where kind of, is it would you support, or do you feel as if their current level of support is sufficient? How was it?
Well, I think if they're saying sufficient, they would have added that though in the scale already. Yes, it's there where it's really kind of the follow, as you were saying. if you don't feel that that's there, are you, you know, committed to agreeing that additional resources should be provided by the city?
So you might think that the current level of care is, you're highly satisfied, but you also might think that more resources could be dedicated to it, right? Though they don't have to be. I just want to be careful not to let that go away because people are like, please,
But I think-
you just feel free to come on up whenever you've got a question.
But I think it's important to say, do you
My
support?
comment about this discussion is, shouldn't that be a budget committee
Yes.
event?
Yes.
That people go to the budget to talk about funding for the trees. I don't think we're here to give a survey about how the community feels about trees. We all feel that they're not spending enough money. I don't think that would be even if you ask. But it's not up to us to fund the tree care. It's up to the city council and the annual budget. He's right about the line items if you look through them. I did read them. So I don't think it's up to us to put in hours because the money will always be an issue the next 20 years. They've been an issue the last 20. So I don't think we should muddy it with the money as to get what do people want us for the next 20 years for the plan to say. Thank you.
I'd like to kind of split what Bill was saying and what Donna was just saying. I don't think we should be saying how the council should fund this, whether it's a bond or anything else.
Oh, no.
That's way outside the realm of this master plan. But it sounds like question 8B and maybe 8C could be combined. Do you support the city allocating additional resources for forestry and park, or whatever, however you want to phrase it, care, but do we need a caveat that could, understanding that that might sacrifice other city facilities?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say less police,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but something has to give.
But you could just capture the sentiment, the first part of that, Bob, which is, would you support additional resources be allocated
To support.
you know, city care of public trees,
Good.
which is as a follow-on to this,
Period.
how satisfied,
Period, right.
period.
That sounds
And you
like
could
it.
ask, you know,
Yes.
and you could do that on a 5-point scale again, or you could do that on a, you know, yes, no, whatever.
And then we take that information to council, hey, 95% of the population says we need
like
more, allocate more resources to
You want
whatever extent is possible.
5-point or just yes or no? What do you think?
I think
best?
5-point is probably better,
Okay.
but you can do it however you want. But I think the key thing here is you may get a lot of people, Bob, to your point, say, you know, somewhat not very or not at all satisfied.
Okay.
When they type in free text, it may be things like, it takes too long, or there's lots of stumps. I mean, things that are easily correctable with additional resources. I think that's what's gonna happen. So when you have this resource, well, can be corrected, but and then if you have sentiment saying supporting more resources, right, that kind of flows
Yeah,
together.
it's kind of.
for you.
All right, so I think we came up with a B, and I believe it doesn't muddy it up too much, Donna, to your point. I thought you made a good point, and Bill, certainly appreciate your enthusiasm to go to city council, you know, with the hopes of, you know, securing some funding for a number of projects around the city. So, yeah, more the sentiment, I think that was the right word, honestly, right there. So, great. Let's keep going. We've got, we're an hour in, and we're almost halfway through the questions that we were here to look at, and certainly add in more if we are, which is great. Again, a reminder to those online, please just put your hand up so I can get you in. I don't want to miss your comments. And here in the chambers, just walk up to the mic and I'll acknowledge you, and then please feel free to share your thoughts. So number 9 was not one of the bold questions. Please rank the following from 1 to 5 in order of what you believe should be the priority of forestry field tasks. So,
I think it's a drop.
I mean, it is their job. I'm not sure why the questions are really out there unless we're just trying to get feedback about what a particular resident views as being a deficiency in the overall care of the forest. I mean, I think we have to
It's kinda
trust
up
that
to
our
you
city
guys.
officials
It's up to you,
understand their
Justin.
forestry positions, what needs to happen, right?
yeah, okay.
Justin, your
yeah.
thoughts?
I mean, I feel like it kind of. if we're gonna add a explain why you're dissatisfied question, then I think that covers
Yeah.
this, because that's kind of what this came from, was like, are you satisfied? No. Well then, what should be the priority? And number one is stumps, because you've got 3 stumps on your street and they're taking up parking spots, and that's kind of. But if you can explain that in writing, saying I'm dissatisfied because there's stumps, or the tree in front of my house is dropping sap all over my car, and I've complained to City Hall 4 times, then I think that kind of covers that. We don't need that. If you want to take it out, we can take it out.
I actually think it's good. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. I actually think it's a good question. I think if we want people to move through this at a good pace, you're giving them a lot of the key things, and it kind of goes back to what Bob was saying. What do you want to see done? Do you think that we have to take out stumps, trees, prune, more trees? I actually think it keeps it simple, and I would keep it. And if we're asking 1 through 5, you've got your list. So I actually think it's useful. I think it's a good one, personally.
It reflects what people want to see done. Now, whether that's the right, like whether that's the right place to plant the trees, if they say the medians, I don't know, that's you have to decide. You gauge what people say.
The gut feeling again, it's like.
It's really up to what's needed, though, and you guys are the ones that decide.
But in a way, it's educational to the public when they see this. Oh, it's not just planting new trees, they have to remove old trees too. They have to water trees. We have to do all these things.
It's when we do the forestry report, and it's kind of like, well, why did you remove 97 trees the last 3 months and you only planted 3? It's like, I see the city guys, and all they're doing is cutting trees down, or all they're doing is grinding stumps, but they're not planting trees, or they're not grinding.
And it's all backlogged.
Yeah.
And it's all backlogged.
Well, all right. I mean, looking at the question, it does, again, when referencing those best-in-class reports, or the new plans that you shared with us a few months back, it does address what do you think of the current forestry activities, right? And so, I mean, it's there, and also, I suppose, to a degree, what's most and least concerning about our urban forest. So I had put a big X through it, but it sounds like there might be a consensus otherwise. How does the steering committee, anyone have some hard feelings one way or the other? I saw Donna nodding her head, so.
The only thing I could add is, reading ahead, it is very similar to number 10.
Okay.
So.
Well, that's the good news is that's the next question.
Which is very similar.
Oh, well, with that in mind, why don't we take a quick look at number 10 and see if it could be one or the other, or if there's a way to combine them in such a way. And you know what, Tamara, I'm just going to turn it back over to you, because you really, I think, kind of were the catalyst to get it back in front of us. What's your thoughts about one or the other, and do you think that it's answering kind of the same question?
I think that you would get more response to 9 by the survey takers. What is maintaining street trees is tree pruning. And to remove dead or dying trees is tree removal. So there's a lot of things that kind of have a crossover. This is simple, I think, if you're trying to encourage
tree plantings the same
people.
as
Yeah, I mean, we could maybe, so I think that they're similar.
Could you take the question for number 9 and change it to 1 through 6, and then
add something else?
Make it the question for number 10 instead of what do you appreciate? Actually, what do you think the priority should be? I mean, it's kind of addressing the same things.
Yeah, I do. I think that's a good idea.
I
think that 10 is a better question, but that the answers from 9 might be the easier answers.
I was saying the flip.
You were saying the flip?
10 is hard to answer in a forced rank, because when you have this many items in a forced ranking, the fewer words you have in the selection.
I think 9 is good.
I can't hear you when you don't.
I'm sorry, Sarah. when you have a forced rank question where you have multiple responses that you're ranking, I said when you have the things that you're choosing across to rank, the fewer words in the choice, the better. 1 or 2 words is better. Like this question 10 would be very hard would take someone a long time to force rank. Number 10.
Got it. So then with that in mind, if you're asking question number 10 and looking at the responses of response number 9, is there anything that's missing in 9 that's in 10 that we could incorporate?
Yes, I was just looking at that.
Yeah.
So we have tree plantings, tree watering, stumps, tree removals, tree pruning.
Yeah.
If we added one more line, combine inspect trees for risk / consultation for private trees.
I like it.
If we put that into the list of number 9 and the question itself for number 10, I think we got a.
I think take out the word field, because that's the other thing about 9 is this is what do you want the crew to do, and then we say what do you want the forestry department to do. Like, do you want them out, inspecting trees you find hazardous? And that's that new other line, other option. And we'll just take out the word field and add forestry department.
How about from the steering committee, anybody feeling strongly one way or the other about the rewording and combination of these two?
That was good to me.
Doesn't look like it, and here in chambers, it looks like
The only other
good.
thing I might add, and
Yeah.
again, this kind of goes back to Bill's point about, again, under the urban forest plan is the issue about fire danger and risk, and the issue about getting rid of dead trees. And I know, again, back to our strategic planning meeting, someone brought up the fact that they were concerned that on private property, at least as it current stands within the city, you still need to get a tree permit and pay whatever the permit fee is to have a dead tree removed from your property. And so there was a concern that if we're trying to eliminate fire risk in the city, why should someone have to pay a tree permit fee to have a tree removed that's going to help alleviate potential fire risk within the city?
Good point.
That's a very good
And I don't know how you address that, and I'm just bringing this as a point that made sense in this meeting about how can we get resident feedback. Or if I was a resident and I had to pay a permit fee for a dead tree when we're trying to eliminate dead trees and avoid fire risk.
Maybe it
It's
just
a deterrent.
Maybe it just needs to be changed in the regulations, actually.
So what do you need? Something like as a response, like just city sympathy?
What's that?
How do you want to, exactly. How do you want to phrase this? Because, no, it's true. Well, in our big storms, the fees are being waived, right? It's like trees are coming down, right?
Well, we did
Well,
request after the fact permits.
Got it.
I talked with, we had a meeting with planning this morning and we talked part about that just because it is a lot to ask people to remove or pay a lot of money to remove a dead tree, but that's kind of the way it's always been. So would be something we'd have to change going forward.
Right.
It's a different process.
If you recall at the last, I think it was the last meeting, we talked about the new tree permit fees.
Yeah.
I think certain fees went up, certain fees went, stayed the same. It was that one of the council members, and I can go back and check my notes, one of the council members did say we should not charge for dead tree removals on private property because of the fire, to reduce fire hazards. But at the end of the day, the vote was to have the new tree removal permit fee. So that, it was discussed, but I guess not.
It got shut down.
What's that?
It got shut down.
It got shut down. As far as I remember, but I could double check.
Is there a way that, it's a valid point, is there a way that you see incorporating that into this particular question that we're talking about? Because I think it's valid for sure, and I don't know if it's anywhere else that we can add it in, so.
Or what we could do is add another, we have those first 5.
Plus 6. Was
6
one.
now.
Yep.
We could do it a 7th, fire fuel reduction.
Okay, great.
Fire fuel reduction.
Nice.
It's also a later
we're up to
question
7.
that kind of brings that up too.
What'd you say, fire?
Fire fuel
That's
reduction.
good.
That'll be number 1. by
Oh,
the
I
way.
saw, Bill, you shot your hand up.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Your Honor. It's so important. Your Honor. I wish I was there to see you in person. But anyways, all the surveys that I did,
I like it.
recall that the way I met Chip and the way I got on this commission was by a informal email thread that I have like 100 emails. One of the main things was with Justin getting more funding and having more power, if you will, he can identify dead trees and then order them out. Whether or not there's a fee charged, I mean, as a courtesy to reducing fire risk, I think there ought not be a fee charge, but that's just arithmetic. What's important is we have more eyes on there, because there are a lot of properties that are under-maintained, and with Justin having the juice that he'll have after we're done with all this, he can go in and say, we got 4 dead trees on these 7 properties. We're going to take them out. We're going to post them, and these folks are going to be responsible for taking them out. Whether or not there's a fee involved is another issue, but I really believe this is important to have, especially based on the informal information I got prior to all this. Thank you.
Well, great. We're obviously happy to have you as a part of the steering committee, so thank you for your comments. It sounds like we've figured out how to phrase this one, and so we had 9 and 10. We eliminated one of them. That's some progress for us. Let's keep going. We're on to 11 at 4:15. Let's see. What tree benefits services do you value? And this one is in bold, so it's one that staff likes, recommends. Within the commission, right away, any general comments, feedback around it?
Watering is a 5-year thing. It's kind of different.
Anything from anyone in particular?
Seems like a heck lot of things.
There's a lot of things. You get to circle all that apply. You just get to go, yeah.
Okay.
Right? So is there something missing that tree benefit or service?
Hi, Commissioner.
One second, Donna, we're going to kind of talk through the
You said
committee.
she raised her hand.
I said she could just come up and then I'd acknowledge her.
Okay.
I did, again.
Yes, Your Honor.
On this particular question, when you have this many responses where people can circle as many as they want with this many, it's really good to have it followed up with a force top 3. It's just, it won't add a lot to the questionnaire design, but for the programming, what happens is whatever ones you circle, however many you circle, you then get served up whatever you circled, and you pick your top 3. It gives you a way to have a better idea of the top slice.
Is that a follow-up question to it?
It's like a B. So like the A part of this question is you can circle all
All
that
of
apply.
them. And pick the top.
And
Now pick the top 3.
then what happens is automatically you're just served up the responses that you circled, and you're asked to pick your top 3, of those. So if you just have 3, if you just have, do you see what I'm saying? It's a simple programming thing that it doesn't add a lot of time. But it's very common with these kind of questions.
That's good feedback. Anybody else commission-wise? We do have Donna right here and would love to acknowledge her.
No, I just wanted to comment, Commissioner Kelly, in the number I, it doesn't say anything about preserving the view. The benefits of the services, screening, shade, preserving the view of the mountains or the trees. And she brought that up on another question, and I think that's as important as some of the others.
Yeah, that's great. That's an add-in. That's perfect. Now, I do see some hands up on line. We'll go, Maria, you get to be first. I don't know if Bill just had his hand up for every question or not.
It also reduces crime and violence. I think the number's usually between 10 to 15% at least.
I missed what she said.
She's suggesting that reducing crime and violence could be one of the reasons why trees are a benefit or a service that you value. Because you feel, well, she had a statistic that she cited for us. So, okay, thank you, Maria, appreciate that. Bill, did you have something, or had you just had your hand up? Oh, hands back up. You're muted. Nope, hands down.
I forgot to put my hand down. Wait a minute. Now it's down. Thank you, sir. Sorry.
That's all right. So we had a suggestion to add view preservation or preserving the view. We had a suggestion to add here crime reduction. Reducing crime. I don't know why we shouldn't add either of those. They both sound like good additions. Because again, then, as Commissioner Kelly suggested, that once you've made your choices and you could choose all of them, you're gonna get now pick your top 3, right? Does that sound like have a consensus here?
Fine.
Oh, yeah.
So we pick our top 3 after we've circled them all, and we put a number by them, or how do we, is that a follow-up?
It's a follow-up, so you
Okay.
basically get served, you only will see the choices you circled. So anything you didn't circle will go away.
Okay,
And you'll just see everything that you selected is important.
okay.
And then you'll be asked to pick your top 3. And you can choose for that to be a force rank 1, 2, 3, or you can just ask somebody to put 3 tick boxes. It doesn't matter.
Do we want to think about just force ranking? I see here, we are asking questions in a lot of different ways, and that could be good, because you might appeal to a lot of different people. We've got force ranking, we've got circling, we've got just circle 1, circle all that apply. We have a lot of different.
That's good.
Yeah, so I was saying that can be good because it can appeal to a lot of different people. There's a lot there. Would we want to, I don't know. I guess we could probably just circle it and do the top 3, because we do want to hit all these different areas. So I think a follow-up of a top 3 is
important.
is important. No, you have to.
Sounds like we have consensus, but Linda just popped her hand up, so Linda, yes.
I was just going to say, in regard to the issue of the view and concern about views, that's actually addressed in question 12. So
That's actually what?
As a dislike.
if you look,
right. Okay.
Donna was concerned. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm just right.
And that's our next one. So
Right.
I think we've got 11 on the books, and we're gonna go look at 12. And so, Linda, use your hand. Oh, hands down. Okay, great. Okay. So, what consequences of trees do you dislike? You get to circle or select all that apply. You can step up to the microphone.
Excuse me, I just learned about this meeting last night and got this, went through it, and I have a number of questions which I hope I can bring up at the end that have been addressed. I did make a note though, under 11 and 12, it seems to me that if you just ask people to circle, you're gonna have a mass of circles and really no handle on an answer. So you almost have to put a numeric value to each one of 11 and 12, I think.
Michael,
to get, I think, any kind of a real answer with meat to it.
Okay.
But if everybody circles all these, and 11, 12 is going to look like, well, nobody liked this one, and that's it.
Did you like the addition once you circled the ones in number 11, since we just closed that one, then what's going to happen is going to pop up follow-up to the things you circled. You get to pick your top 3, so that we get a better understanding of what actually is the most important. That was the idea around that.
Well, I
for 11.
I have a question, Mike, just on that. Is this if you're doing it on the computer?
Yeah.
But we need paper ones too, so that.
You can just circle.
It'll be the same
you
thing.
Just have people.
Then we have
put a
to
big
say circle the
Yeah.
3, okay, but that has
So
to
you'll
be.
But it's a good point. It's not. It is there, and I think that was why it was brought up, that there would be an opportunity once you did circle. Maybe you circle every single one, and those are all the things that you find as a benefit or a value. Then it's going to ask you, well, now what are your top 3 of everything you circled?
Actually, that would follow.
So that's the
That would
follow up to
follow.
11 that we created.
do it on 12
So
too.
and well, now we're talking about 12, and I didn't know did you have any comments specific to 12 outside of that?
Things, but I'll wait as they come up. But at the end, I'd like to make also a comment that I thought I was going to be making at the beginning, but I guess not. But believe me, welcome, Jess. Welcome to the city.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Okay, so just taking it right back here then for 12, yes.
I have a few, put my glasses. So on F, where it says tree limb failure, I'd like to put and resulting damage, and then inhibit view, block and inhibit view. And then we need to include, I think, solar and fire danger.
Meaning inability to have solar.
Yeah.
Prevents solar
Prevents
or
solar.
block. I don't know.
May
That'd be 2.
prevent solar, so, yeah.
That'll probably have to be 2 separate ones, right?
Yeah,
So-
they're separate, but the words around solar would be
Prevent solar panels?
Prevent solar yeah. Block solar panels?
Solar use.
Shade solar panels?
Solar use, perhaps?
Is that
Or limits
addressed in the other?
limits
where
Or do
you're
we
actually allowed
add
to
that to-
specify?
Limit solar use.
Add that to A, block sunlight, shade lawn, garden, and block.
Separate. I think limit
Solar.
solar use is separate.
Well,
Limit
maybe
solar,
we
you
need,
had
we
a
could
good-
add solar to
Limit
that.
solar panels.
We could add solar to A.
But I think some people shade in, shading your lawn versus shading a solar panel, I think are two different
Yeah,
things.
Okay,
one's on your roof,
so
one's
we
on
need
your lawn.
difficulty with solar panels or
Bob
something.
had a good, Bob's suggestion, he said limits
Solar
solar
panel.
panels.
Okay. And then
And you had one other one, Sarah?
fire danger.
Fire danger.
I see that Maria's hand is up. Yes, Maria?
Okay, I probably wouldn't add the word block and inhibit view because the words are pretty much the same. However, you might want to add sap under litter. So I know that is an issue with carpet.
Seriously, if someone knows how to get rid of that, let me know.
Okay.
I have trouble understanding
Yeah,
Maria on the phone. Could you repeat?
Well, I think
you
what
said?
Maria said was, well, first, if I mistakenly speak, let me know that there was no reason to add the word block to inhibit view. She said it was redundant. And then she said that she felt like adding sap to the litter in terms of leaves, seeds, fruit, etc., was a word to be added, which
Okay.
that sounded
Well,
fine.
block and inhibit are two different things. Inhibit just reduces it, I think. It's the way I would interpret it, and block is when it cancels it out. So I'd like block and inhibit view.
Are there any other strong thoughts around the use of the word block and inhibit?
No, but I do have a question.
Yeah.
I think that the solar use point was excellent, Sarah, because I believe that there's going to be more rules and limits and things around when we remodel, build homes, that we need to have solar. So that could be a big factor, I think, for a lot of
So
people as some time goes
sounded
on.
like we're adding that in.
Yeah, no, I think so, but I think that that's a big factor that we're going to have to be
Especially in the
aware
next
of.
40 years.
You got to
yeah.
add a boy.
Yeah.
I'm about to get to add a girl.
That was a big
Yeah,
one.
she is a girl.
She gave me
Yeah.
an add a girl.
From a girl
Don't need
to
help here.
No, that's important.
So is there anything else we want to, that needs to be changed to 12? Are we going to do the same thing where we're also going to have the pop-up that's going to address what Mike was talking about? We're going to have the top 3 that you really dislike. Fantastic. Let's keep going then. 13 also is a question that staff is recommending having a large tree on my property, ... So encircle all that apply.
I have one thing I'd like to add there.
Okay.
So maybe C or something, that top part, is frightening to my neighbor. Tom,
Having
that's
a large tree on my
recognized.
property is frightening to my neighbor. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's
he's
true.
just
My
having to
neighbor is
deal with it.
frightened, so I get it.
Well, Bill's tree, the tree next in Bill's neighbor fell on his house.
That's a good one.
What if you said,
Oh, wait,
Sarah,
but-
is frightening to me or my neighbor? Because we didn't capture frightening to
Okay,
me, and
good.
we've had many people in the last year stand here and tell us
yeah, okay.
they're.
Good. That's a good one.
Okay, yeah.
I think this one should also say, having a large tree on my property in Carmel, ... that Carmel should be specified there. And on response E, I don't have any large trees on my property in Carmel.
Of course, it really should be Carmel-by-the-Sea, because
Yeah.
Carmel is the point, too.
And I don't see any hands up on the Zoom, and don't really see anybody jumping up to the microphone here in chambers. Sounds like we've added a couple quick fixes, one additional point, and then just some verbiage changes to the question and also to E. Is there anything else? Nope, doesn't look like it. Great. Number 14. Feeling like we're getting some momentum all of a sudden. How do you feel about Monterey pine trees? Uh-oh, this is going to be a good one. Let's see. That's one just stuck right in.
Look how fast you raised your hand. That's awesome.
Hands are going up. We'll keep it right here. Just the commission first. This question is, again, it's recommended by staff. And thoughts generally about the question, anything that needs to be changed or around it?
The only thing I would add is they do too much damage, would be another, how do you feel about them?
Okay.
Well, that's kind of
that be the better
wrapped around
maintained?
D, isn't it?
What?
It's kind of wrapped around D.
What else would it be?
They're not suitable for our urban environment.
Well,
So I guess I'll ask a question. Why are we drilling into just Monterey pines in this particular one? Why isn't this just addressing like what we've identified as our significant trees in our urban forest?
Good question.
That would be my first take at it, because we've got more than just pines.
Say, how do you feel about our upper canopy trees?
That's probably better. I mean, just the majority of the,
that's right.
The majority is either cypresses or
Yeah.
Monterey pine,
That's
right?
good.
I mean,
it was mostly just the majority of the trees that failed during the storms were pines, and
Right.
just kind of, they are the more contentious tree. So we just wanted to get a gauge on that. But upper canopy makes more sense, because then it's
Good.
But you
Yeah.
should say upper canopy such as a
Monterey
such as
pines or
Monterey.
Monterey cypress.
Yeah, because not everybody knows, such as Monterey pine or Monterey cypress.
Yeah, I like
because
that.
People don't.
Or redwood, right?
Yes.
Well, let's go through
So are
our
you gonna
list.
Yeah.
I think it's the right thing to do. Because really, nowhere else do we kind of zero right
Yeah.
here
Right.
so hard in this survey.
Yeah, when these questions were putting together, that's, the storms had just finished. There was a lot
Understandably, and
of-
it's a
Yeah, so-
significant part of our oldest.
that we want to go forward in the next many years, so upper
I
canopy
wanted to
makes more
just add,
sense.
Justin, were you going to mention the trees? Is that how it got, are you saying the trees?
Yeah, we're gonna say
such as.
upper canopy trees
Trees
such as Monterey
Monterey
pines,
So
Monterey cypress.
Sarah Davis always said that the oak should be included in upper canopy, that they're always considered a large tree. Do you agree with
No.
that? Or should it be in?
They're not.
They're not 80 feet, right? Like, they're
It's
not
40
very
feet
common.
is upper canopy, but they're not upper canopy.
A lot of
trees.
them are 40 feet around.
So we've got, I've got Linda's hand is up. So Linda, you have a comment?
I do. I don't know that this is the time for me to introduce Joy Stevens, who the Monterey Pine Preserve was named after, and she is a co-founder of Monterey Pine Forest Watch, and she wanted to have, she's concerned about, she wishes she could make a statement herself, but she's 96 years old and she really doesn't have a computer and she can't actually come to the meeting and speak for herself. So she drafted dictated a comment to me because, of course, her concern is like mine, are Monterey Pines and Carmel's history with them. Is it appropriate for me to read this? Because it is context for that question.
Okay, so knowing
Is that
that
okay?
you've heard us change the verbiage of the question so that we're actually just addressing the upper canopy. And again, this is, we're looking to the community for their engagement here. And so what's their thought about it? So the question being, not do you know the history of the Monterey pine per se here in this particular question, but it's how do you feel about upper canopy trees such as the Monterey pine, as the Monterey cypress, and the California redwood. I'm not exactly sure which one it is, so yeah.
Coast redwood.
Coast, thank you, appreciate it. So maybe this wouldn't be, I don't think this, I'm just addressing the question, but I think it'd be prudent at some point to certainly have that, have that drafted letter read to us, or at least shared with the entire steering committee, if that's okay with you?
Sure. I guess we'll submit it to the Pine Cone as a letter then.
Well, I'd
Maybe
certainly
that's
like
the
to
way
see
to-
it, so.
Linda, this is Bob. We spoke the other day. You submitted a bunch of information that is in today's packet. Is that part of this, or is this
It's
something else?
No, really, her comment is more about the historic and ecological and evolutionary connection of Carmel's forest, Carmel's Monterey Pine Forest, to the greater Monterey Pine Forest, because, and the level of awareness of citizens of the peninsula in general, Carmel included, of that connection, and especially the connection that Monterey Pines have with Carmel. And that is a point that, you know, she always makes when she gives her talks, and we always make, the members of our group always make, to try to bring people's awareness that they actually live in a Monterey Pine Forest. We all on the peninsula live in Monterey Pine Forest. It's just that in Carmel, you know, historically, we decided to, decided to make it part of our character from the very beginning. And so she just wanted to make that point, just in relation to this question, particularly since it did single out Monterey Pines. And as you pointed out, there was no other species that was actually singled out. But the context is something I think we need to keep in mind, just because, whether we know it or not, we all live in a Monterey Pine forest. And so Monterey Pines get a bad rap, but they are what give us a lot that we are not even aware of, I think. So that's why this seemed an appropriate place. But I'll just work with her to craft it into a letter to the editor, and you can just distribute it to everyone. That'd be great.
Well, I'd also add that I think once we get through these questions, there is an open forum to discuss adding additional questions that aren't here, and we've been kind of doing a little hybrid of that as we've been going through. So perhaps then what we should discuss, and if you want to bring it back up, is a question that goes out in the survey along the lines of how familiar are you with the. I don't know exactly how to word it, but kind of along your lines and directions. So why don't we get to that when we hit the end?
Okay.
And appreciate you bringing that up. Any other comments around this 14 and the way in which we've reworded it?
I just have two comments. The first is on I'm sorry. I have two comments. The first is on the style of the question. I think this one is really very well suited for a grid. So this can be online, or Sarah, to your point, on paper, where you have a grid. So for each of these, there's a strongly agree to strongly disagree scale to the right, and they check where they are. All of these to me seem like relevant attributes that we hear a lot of conversation around, and even at the public works meeting, the public community meeting we had, there's lots of discussion around each of these items. And so just a circling that it applies doesn't really give you the sentiment, strength of sentiment that we're looking for. So this can easily be a grid question where everyone can do that strongly agree to strongly disagree scale for these attributes. I think that would give us better data. And then the only other question or comment I had was, Sarah, you mentioned frightening, you brought the word frightening or safety into the last question, and I actually think it applies here, right? Because it's an upper canopy. So I don't know how you would suggest wording it, but something like they can be.
Does that fall under D?
Well, of course, it was covering large trees there on 13, so it would.
They can feel unsafe for our urban environment, or they can feel unsafe, or they can be frightening, right? I just think that concept that you had was articulating something we've heard a lot in these commission meetings. So rather than suitable, would people feel comfortable with they can feel unsafe for our urban environment?
So
since it's how do you feel, so it's they are unsafe?
Are you writing the changes down? Okay.
Yeah.
Since it's already, the question is how do you feel, right? So you're feeling
they can be unsafe for our urban environment.
Would we keep that in 13 or just put it in 14?
This is just, it's going in 13 already. Don't go backwards. We're not going back. No regression. So this is just rewording D. So one more time with that.
I think they can be unsafe
in our
urban environment.
Okay, they can be. Okay. And any disagreements or other thoughts there? Looks like everyone's in favor. We're going to keep moving then. Sorry? You okay?
I said, yeah.
Oh, perfect. 15.
Agreed with you.
Thank you. That's rare. Let's see. It's this one wasn't highlighted, and so it's important to sustain the row of large Monterey cypresses along Scenic Drive. Part of the master plan. What are we doing with this? It's getting really specific. We kind of just poo-pooed the very specific in the last question. Do we want this here? Is this where's everybody's thoughts? Obviously staff didn't feel it was as important as other questions.
Do you have any thoughts?
I did. How did you know? I was too relaxed. My thought is that a lot of the cypresses along Scenic have been battered by the storms. And if we use the word sustain, the word sustain kind of bugs me.
What about maintain?
They're hard to maintain once they're cracked and damaged and broken and
pretty
on the
ugly.
ground. Yeah, I mean, well, no, they're iconically beautiful, but they've been beat up. But they've been beat up. So maybe the word sustain, but they are a very important. I mean, of all the trees in the city, those are the trees that
Preserve.
that kind of stand out as being the most iconic.
Especially at the
Preserve.
beach.
Preserve, that's
And if we're not gonna trying not to be so super specific, this is where we bring in the by the sea and talk about trees near the beach instead of just on Scenic, or
The trees on the beach, are there trees on the beach?
they're near the beach.
There's a lot of driftwood on the beach.
Okay, that's next week. We're gonna get to the driftwood next week for sure.
I think that even when the tree has died and there's nothing left on it, even just the trees that are left there are like aren't work. But the ones that are on the property, if I think about all of Scenic going around and across from River Beach and the trees that are there, they're beautiful. Maybe not the really big ones, but the ones that are, I think that they're artistic in nature too. So, I mean, I think that safety isn't overriding on all that we're talking about. I think a gentleman had said that previously. So we don't want a dead tree that could fall over, because I know the ones we looked at just a month or so ago. But if there's an artistic nature, some of them are lower, are safe, but we've kept them for whatever the reason. So looking at that as part of it too, some of them may not be living. And I don't know if that's a case-by-case basis, but I've seen them on private property. There's some across the street from River Beach, right along
county,
there.
yeah.
That's in the county. But
So are you, just so I understand, but you're suggesting that this is an important question?
Very important question.
So you feel like it addresses, what do you think of maybe the current state of the forest, or it's a concern about the urban forest, or where do you see that kind of falling?
I think it's tricky. I think if we change this one to upper canopy, I think we'll get a very different answer than if we leave it as Monterey cypress. I just think we need to be aware of that if we change it to upper canopy.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that. I was suggesting that we don't add this question in.
So this one, if you make it an attribute in 14, if you just add it as an attribute and you switch that to that matrix I was describing, strongly agree to strongly disagree matrix, you'll get this one for free for not a lot of time in the survey.
That's a good point,
Does that
because
make
it's in the
sense?
same
Sorry.
5-point,
There's
right?
people talking. Hello, Donna.
Does that make
Hi.
sense?
I was questioning the word important, that, somebody thought it was important, and I don't know if it is or not, and the same as sustain. Are all the trees, the cypress trees, were they naturally grown there, or did we plant them? And if we're planting them, do we have too many planted there for the bad weather that they get? And do we keep planting them there knowing they're going to get beat up? So, but I don't know why they're important. I mean, which, we singled out one place. I think they're gorgeous when I go down there and see them. But if you lived on a different street, you would say, why is that street more important than mine? And more important for the city's sustain. So I think you might have to incorporate them. But I know the people there don't want more trees in front of their view, and we're looking at that all the time. And if those trees need more maintenance than the other trees on other streets, that might not be a good idea. So I just don't quite know why they're important, though. I know they're lovely, and I don't know how much energy we put into maintaining them, if more than the rest of the city. And that was just a question when I saw that. So
Yeah, thanks.
The cypress were planted, they weren't natural
They
right
weren't
along the-
natural.
There wasn't even a street there.
I
Of
didn't
course, when
think
we
so. I
first
know
came.
when I saw it,
But,
it was,
you know, I think almost every picture of the beach has a cypress in the front of it because it is so artistic. And I think that if bigger ones were planted, not these 3-foot ones, they would live.
but the residents don't want
And,
those.
well, no, a lot of residents want them, they just don't want them as a hedge. You know, they want them to.
I mean, I
they
don't
want to be
know.
able
I
to
don't
still
live
see
down there. I
something.
was just
And
curious
they're
Certainly.
spotty, they're not all together.
Why we're singling out a street, and I think that Kelly addressed that too. But again, you're much more informed than I am about this.
Not
Okay,
really.
thank you, Donna. Mike? We see your hand up there, Maria.
I think it's a no-brainer that cypresses along Scenic are beautiful and are so much a part of Carmel. Having grown up down there, I know that they birthed themselves, for lack of better words there. Unfortunately, though, in the 70s, there were a couple of 3 or 4 new homes that went in on Scenic, and they tried to kill them, the property owners, with what was called copper nails. Anyway, it was my understanding that the copper nails really don't kill cypresses. And so that really didn't work, and then the property owners tended to move away, and we're back to a beautiful selection of cypresses along, and they should be really encouraged, cypress trees, I think, along Scenic Drive. But in the question here, number 14, I notice it's worded in such a manner. How do you feel about Monterey pine trees? More should be planted. There are, and it escalates down.
I got it.
However, if you take question number 15, it is important to sustain the role of large Monterey.
It's flip.
On this one, okay, you agree, but excuse me, it's at number 16, it turns right around. If a tree is removed within the city limits, whether public or private property, now it strongly disagree, neutral, agree. You know, it's a shift in parameter that
Yes.
I think you really got to make that.
The
But
consistency and the.
certainly, the cypresses
suggestiveness.
along Scenic should be encouraged. Give them the high note.
Great, thank you, Mike. Appreciate that, and those comments are valid. Maria, you had your hand up. Did you have a comment in regards to question 15? And we're still considering whether or not to add it in. And
Sure. I think we've planted quite a few cypress down on Scenic, and one of the issues is that when they're teenagers, they are bushy, like a hedge, until they're trimmed up and they get up above the roof line. So people having patience with that in-between stage is definitely important. Also, the cypress that are currently planted there are about 125 years old. They were planted by Devendorf's employees. And one of the things I've always been a proponent of is creating or planting those succession trees so that when they do come down, that another one's coming up behind it. That's all my comment on that.
thank you, Maria. For me, I'm not discounting the importance of this collection of trees. I don't really feel like this question really kind of like fits into the theme of what we're trying to do in terms of engagement. I wouldn't have a problem with it being left out.
I wouldn't either.
I would consider just adding it as an attribute to 14 and getting, because we're going to put that strongly disagree matrix, and just have it say the cypresses along Scenic Drive should be maintained. And you get a strongly agree to strongly disagree on that. And you're not passing judgment on importance.
And I have a point to that too. Do we need to put down on Scenic? Can we just leave it as the question? I mean, I'm assuming this means Carmel-by-the-Sea. So can we just make it for the entire city? Because I think.
Oh, then I would probably take it out of 14 then, because in 14, this is where we're asking how people feel about the upper canopy trees, like Monterey cypress, Monterey
Right.
pine. And that's we say generally more should be planted, they're an important part, they should be maintained, like, and that was a specific thing on scenic.
So how does this
Otherwise,
kick
we're gonna
out?
have to go
So
with
can you
every
explain
tree.
what you mean?
Yeah, so basically what happens is, it's just think of a matrix where you see the attribute and then you see that 5-point scale to the right. Instead of going vertical, it goes horizontal, and you just check where on the 5 points you are for each attribute. It's easy to do online, and it's easy to do in a paper.
Got it. So it's just going to be E, and it's going to
Exactly.
say, understood. Okay.
Except I took the word.
I support that.
I took the word important out to take because these are, I just said the cypresses along Scenic Drive should be maintained.
Okay,
I
you
didn't-
change it to maintain.
You could keep it exactly as is. It's important to maintain the cypresses on Scenic Drive. That it could be either.
That's how you feel. Everybody good with that?
Yeah,
I don't
I
see
agree.
everybody's good there. So we're eliminating 15, but we're creating an E to number 14, and it's been described. I think we can say it sounds good.
F, right?
And was it an F?
Yeah, E was the unsafe.
Oh no, D was
No,
changed.
D was changed to they can be unsafe in our urban
Instead of
environment.
suitable, we got rid of that part. Boy, I hope somebody else is taking notes.
You can I'll send you.
Woo,
send
all
you
right.
to do what
You're gonna have your work cut out for you, Nova. Who knows what Bob's writing over here?
Yeah, don't go by
Wishing she
number.
weren't here.
All right, so that's great. That sounds good. We combined, and
16.
now we're at 16, which is a recommended by the staff. If a tree is removed within city limits, whether it is on public or private property, it should always be replaced with another tree. And then we've got our little toggle of agreement versions. Thoughts around this? Anybody? I think I heard Sarah saying that she loved it just the way it is. Is there other thoughts around it?
Okay.
I mean, I guess that, it addresses, what you
That's
think
okay.
that, what it should, are they representing the community? Is it, what do you think of the activities? So we're moving on. Didn't see any hands up online. The chambers looks pretty quiet. Although Mike's rearing up, I know he's got something, so we'll see. First, what, did we actually, are we 17?
17.
Hallelujah, the last page. Fantastic. So 17 is not necessarily a recommended question from staff. Let me read it briefly. Do you currently want a tree planted in the public right-of-way in front of your home or business if the city were to provide you a list of adequate trees to choose from?
Not particularly helpful.
Does anybody really, there's a bye-bye wave, and there's a head shaking,
It's
and
pretty specific.
there's tomatoes
kind of
being
right now.
thrown. I mean, it's getting ugly.
I forgot my tomatoes.
There you go. I think it sounded like, I don't really see anybody online saying that they stand one way or the other on this, and let's take staff recommendation, keep moving on.
Good.
And now we've got this open-ended 18, what is the most important issue that the urban forest master plan should address? And obviously you see in the sequences 19 and 20, this is kind of the closer right now for what staff had recommended. And so first I would say this should most likely just be the closer, whatever happens.
Except for we have to have 20.
Okay, but except for maybe we have to have 20, says Commissioner Burling, and we're gonna get there, but we're on 18. So I just wanna make sure that everybody's in agreement that this is gonna be left in and open-ended. And Commissioner Kelly, did you have any thoughts on just this big open-ended?
No, I like them on both of these open ends actually, but I just have a comment on the coding. I don't know who you're working with on the programming and all that for this, but
I cannot hear you.
I'm sorry. It's more just on the implementation of the survey. I don't know who you're working with or how Davey does this, but how it's coded online is really important to being able to code the free response that comes back.
Okay.
I believe, Tom, you're going to be the surveyor.
Surveyor.
Is that correct?
Survey creator.
Are you issuing the survey?
He's now coming up to make a comment on the record. Please.
I believe it's not coming from Davey. It's coming from you.
Are we creating the Survey Monkey or did Davey?
I did not. Davey did.
No,
Davey-
who, once it's done, we have the final, and we release it. Who is gonna release it? You, Justin, Davey, Kelly?
That's what I was trying to say. Davey publishes it. Davey is the people who have their,
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
remember their terminology, the coding
okay.
people. They do that. They do everything. I mean, if you want me to be the one who clicks send out, I can. But Davey is the one who predominantly does everything. We, as a team, send them the final version.
It sounded like he volunteered.
He's gonna click.
He's
I heard
volunteering to
gonna
click.
That's good.
So it's useful to check in their programming, the open ends and some of these
Yes.
4-strength follow-ons, so I'm happy to help you with that if you want. But
Yes,
that can
we
be
need your
really
expertise,
useful to
yes.
get that right before they go out. And then separately, if we have, it sounds like we're gonna need paper surveys, how we can input those separately.
Yeah, I was actually wondering when you had made that comment regarding how they're coding things in the background. I was actually wondering what you meant. I don't know enough about coding to be able to relay that message. Okay, all right. Yeah,
So-
that sounds great.
So, Mr. Chair, or Your Honor, I should say, we're going to request having Commissioner Brzezowski help us finalize the coding, whatever that means, for the survey the next few days, so Tom can push the
Whatever
button
that combination of words meant.
Brilliant.
without pay.
And we're going to go on to question number 19, if
It's
that's
pretty much the
okay.
same.
Sounds like that was good. So this was not a staff recommendation. Please provide any additional comments or suggestions to help guide the creation of our urban forest master plan. Does anyone feel strongly about including this question or
Skip
take staff recommendation?
It's really the same as.
It's, and I don't think we need it. I think they
Looks
would
like-
put that in number 18,
Looks like
I
we
think
were
they would
just kind
just-
of like
because
moving
that was already
along.
open response.
And, oh, hello, Donna.
Yes, I think it's the same as 18, but it's open-ended. Is there 25 words or less, or 100 words or less? Can they insert, 3 or 4 pages in there?
Good question.
It's interesting that open-ended is great, but
Yeah.
100 words or less, I think there should be, so that people don't send the encyclopedia into it.
Right.
And that's and then the sphere of influence, there's still confusion of what that means. And then who is getting this besides the Friday letter people? How and who? Because you still hear, I didn't know about the survey. So that's always a question. I get the Friday letter and I'm concerned about what happens in the city. So how it's distributed, I think, is so important.
Great feedback.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I can answer that, that's in the staff report. It's going to be on the city website. It will be, there'll be a link to several Friday letters. Familiar with Constant Contact? That's how the city clerk sends out notices of council meetings and planning commission meetings, that type of thing. There's a lot of people on that. And I believe we're going to do the pine cone.
We should do like a
And-
friend referral cup of coffee.
So, so I think the word will get out pretty well.
Great. Okay, so it sounded like we were in agreement to move along and not include 19. So the last question that's here in the packet is 20, also not a staff
This is
recommendation.
extremely important.
Okay, can
Yeah.
I read it? Do you mind?
I thought we all could read it.
Well, I don't know. What is your connection to the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea? There it is. And I'm not going to read the answers since, Sarah, you have some comments right away.
I think we need to know that, because it's not going to be obvious if it's a visitor, and if they can pick up a questionnaire, they might be interested, and we have to know whether they're, and even we need to know who's in the county, because they don't have the same requirements.
Okay, and you like it as it's written A, B, C, and D right there? That
Seems
sounds
okay
like
to
that's
me.
okay to you? Is there any other strong thoughts?
I don't know if
to
cities,
me-
I think we
sorry.
should
I
define
thought we-
sphere of influence. A lot of people may not know what that is.
That's why we
There's
have
a
the
map.
map.
Sphere of
But
influence.
that map is, some people may not know how to read that map, right? I think if you just say,
Black is your sphere of influence, and
Just
white
maybe
in the inside is your city boundary.
maybe we could just do a such as, like, for A, I would say I am a property owner and resident, or we should have we should have we have a lot of property ownership things that we talk about. So I think having property owner in this is important. I'm a property owner and resident in the city. I'm a property owner, but I am not a full-time resident. And then your other ones, I would just give such as, like sphere of influence is Carmel Point, right? And in unincorporated Monterey County.
Carmel Woods.
Right? Carmel Woods. So I would put the places, just so people aren't confused.
Okay, other
And-
thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, I almost thought when I saw that should be the first question. I don't know that we have to move it, but when I think of it, I think that's the first thing you would put on there. You would identify yourself. I don't know that it's a problem, but I'm just hoping that they wheeled through and finished this, and so they get to that. Because I think it's important.
That was discussed with staff a little bit in that if it was the first question, there is some pros and cons, I guess. First question, is that going to dissuade people from, oh, wait a second, I guess I don't fill out this survey. We'd rather have a survey response from somebody in a sphere of influence than people that say, oh, forget it, I'm not going to bother. So that's kind of was our thought, to kind of tuck it at the end, but that's why we're here.
Got it. Yeah. So I understand where you're going with that. I do think it's appropriate at the very end. I feel like it's like a, hey, like, I think
Right.
what happens, you start to qualify people. and
who just filled this out?
Need to qualify
Right.
them.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like saying we're interested in your thought, but we do need to know where you are property-wise.
Absolutely.
This is one of my questions I had listed here, and that is that questions number 1, 2, 3, 6, and 13 refer to Carmel rather than Carmel-by-the-Sea.
Oh, okay.
Carmel-by-the-Sea is 93921. But when you put it in here, Carmel, you're saying 93922 and 23 then. And I think it should be clear that it's Carmel-by-the-Sea. Questions 1, 2, 3, 6, and 13 are addressing. Question 20, which is the one I believe you're looking at right now, does a very poor job, I think, of ensuring that the answers and that you're getting feedback from are those people who pay for the forestry department, the residents of Carmel-by-the-Sea. And I think you got to really tighten that up and make sure you're hearing from Carmel-by-the-Sea, the taxpayers. Nothing against 2.2 or 2.3, and they can have a role in there to be heard also someplace. But I really think that these questions are relevant to 2.1.
Mike, there is 2.3 in Carmel.
I'm sorry.
There is 2.3 in Carmel-by-the-Sea. The part down by the mission.
Some of the annexed property in is there, but that could be.
Well, that's Carmel-by-the-Sea.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Maybe. So
Thanks.
I think
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Yeah. And I believe what we discussed in those previous questions is changing the wording to reflect Carmel-by-the-Sea already. So thanks for that. Is yes. Yeah. So already been noted, but thank you for the reminder. Yes, Commissioner Kelly.
4 categories. I am a property owner and resident of the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea. B, I am not a resident or property owner in the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea, but I live in Monterey County. I am not a resident, but I work or own a business within the city limits of Carmel-by-the-Sea. And lastly, I do not live in Carmel-by-the-Sea or Monterey County.
Not Monterey County,
Monterey
but that
County, that
includes
work.
Greenfield and King City and so on.
Okay, so
we
do you
need to
just
just
want
put greater Carmel, or how would you phrase it?
It could be the peninsula.
Monterey Peninsula.
Monterey Peninsula?
Yeah, it's better than the county.
Okay,
It narrows it down quite a bit.
Okay, it sounds like I got some thumbs up from Chambers, just reaching back out to the steering committee that's hanging on there, or maybe they're making dinner, not sure. Any thoughts? Don't see any hands popping up, so it sounds as if the introduction of 20 actually back in, the placement of it at the very end. Is everyone in agreement with that? It's kind of like your final little checkbox here, who you are, the specificity of where you're actually, how you reside, right? So that it's speaking specifically and will identify, not anonymously identify, but identified 93921 and 23 residents that are a part of Carmel-by-the-Sea, and categorized with a little bit of verbiage change sounded looks like I've got a bunch of heads that are nodding yes, and then agreement. Did you have any thoughts, Commissioner Sowers? No, looks good. So
A couple people in the audience.
okay, so in regards to 20, or in regards to, I just want to make sure it's in regards to question 20?
Well, it's just more about, 18 and 20, and just the whole process.
Okay, maybe the mic a little bit closer so we can hear you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, well, so specifically to 20, since we already closed 18.
Why don't you go ahead and just wrap that up? Because you're almost there, aren't you? With
Well,
20?
I just opened it up
Next question.
on 20. So did you, specific to 20, you wanted to make some comments? I'm happy to hear them.
Well, I guess I could. My concern is that everyone talks about this as being an urban forest, and when you, I'm sorry, Sarah, talks about us being an urban forest. We're an urbanized forest. In other words, the contradistinction between the two is that an urban forest is something like what Stockton is trying to do. It didn't have a forest, but it's trying to develop one, and so it's planting, thousands of trees. We are an urbanized forest. We were a forest before man ever came here. And this is a very, very old forest. It's a unique habitat. And my concern is that this whole process that you're going through is not educating either all of us in the community or anybody else about the unique aspect of this forest. And it's a very important role in our entire environment. And as a result of that, we're going to come up with results for this master plan that may not be in the best interest of this forest, be in the best long-term interest of this community. And so there's no context for these questions. And so I'd like to ask you to, when you do the master plan, will you start off with a section on the history of the forest, and then the history of Carmel developing in this forest? Because that's totally lost. I'm sure most of the people in this community don't know the history. And so they're going to make decisions for the future of the forest and the viability of the forest based upon no proper information about what this special place is that we all inhabit. So I would like to ask you to consider that, and I don't think, I'm not trying to be unkind, but the people with the Davy consulting group, they don't have an idea about this. They're a bunch of horticulturalists. They're not botanists, they're not geneticists, they're not anything except horticulturalists, basically. And so they're not going to give you all of that information unless someone's going to pay them to take the time to do the research. So that's my pleading to you, is that if all of you aren't really attuned to this forest and understand its relevance in history and relevance to the evolution of this community and where we are today, I would really encourage you strongly to please do that for the sake of our community and the forest. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comment, and we'll certainly encourage you to utilize whether or not it's number 18 when it comes out, the question that does provide that chance to make your comments known. And I also would encourage you to look at some of the best-in-class new urban plans that have come out around the country, and I believe that Davy's been part of the orchestrators of those, and I think they're very sophisticated, and they do a lot of what you're talking about in terms of speaking to the history, and so I hope you'll give it a chance. I think we're on the right path, and certainly appreciate your comments.
Well, I hope so, because with this forest, there are only 5 places in the whole country that this forest is indigenous to. And I mentioned that to you before, 5 locations. And so this is the quintessential location of this forest. If this is lost, then it's gone.
Got it.
Period.
Thanks again.
And I don't think that Davie people have, or anybody else has really, except the people at the universities who study this, and like the Smithsonian and their scientists and so forth, few people realize it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be taking my time to do this. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is gonna let Mike come up?
Okay.
Is that okay with you? Okay.
But I
Good.
do want to comment.
You can. I'm going to give you lots of time to comment.
I'm skipping all my other points and everything here. Melanie is right, though. That's a very important point she's making. But one other thing I wanted to bring up was, and I was disappointed to see, there was nothing in the survey about volunteer program or any involving residents of Carmel in their forestry. Years ago, there used to be a program where residents did participate. Many of the trees that were on city property had little tags on them. And these tags were counted by many volunteers at Carmel would go around making sure the tag was there, tree was there, and it was healthy. And if the tag's gone, that means the tree's gone. And if the tree's gone, and you see a car parked there, you know what happened over the weekend. That tree lost its position. So I would hope, or I wish, that there would be in some way survey or find out an interest on the part of the residents of Carmel involved in a program of volunteering to help our city forester and the forestry department. Because I can't help but believe there are a lot of people out there who would like to participate and help.
Mike,
Thank you for your time.
Well, did you have
can I ask you a question
yeah,
about
please.
that? Yeah. Because I recall, this has maybe been 10 years ago now, some women that would come around and measure our oak trees and things. Is that who you're talking about? Some of the volunteers, and they would mark them down? And
That was later.
okay.
I'm talking about earlier than that.
Okay,
But
okay.
yes, you're right.
Okay.
So
there was that problem too.
Just to follow up, then, because this is an opportunity to introduce potential other questions. Do you have can you kind of wordsmith what you're thinking and like how? Because I agree, and I think we talked about the importance of asking the community about their own interest in terms of level of engagement. What are they willing to do? And I think we've addressed it in terms of, hey, are you willing to plant a tree? Are you willing to take care of it? But we didn't in this. There's no question in the survey that says, hey, how do you know about the opportunities to get involved in volunteerism? Do you know the organizations that and do you have a way in which you would like this to kind of be posed so that we can discuss this further?
And under the supervision with the forester? Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay.
So we
perhaps we can put this
Yeah,
together.
could we add
Thanks for
this
your-
as the
We certainly
final?
can. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to understand if we can come up with a.
21.
It goes somewhere.
Yeah.
I need to go.
I think that's a great
Thank you for
idea.
your comments.
The horses are pulling out. So
The horses are pulling out.
Before Donna, we have a couple other people.
Donna, I do have a couple of people have their hands up,
Okay,
so
thank
just
you.
give us a chance. Bill, I saw your hand up first, and just for appreciate brevity of comments as we're approaching the witching hour here. People are scattering like rats.
30 seconds. Sure, 30 seconds. Thank you, Chairman. This is the mission statement of my subgroup is to preserve what we live in and preserve this forest as sacred. 100% agree with the young lady that spoke a few minutes ago. And what we need to do is make it safe and make it maintained and make it beautiful so it will thrive. So no one's questioning her comments, and that is the lead objective of what we formed our group. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks. And then.
Yes, Bill, a question. That was Bill.
Yep, that was Bill.
Bill, if we had a question to assess volunteerism in this area, would your organization be a good place after the fact that we could point people to? Because when you capture volunteer interest, it's really important to respond in a timely manner and give people a place to go. Right?
In word, yes. I have 50 people that are ready to put gloves on or do whatever they need to do with clipboards. Thank you so much.
So if we captured this interest, we have someone who would.
Boy, Maria, did you hear that? He has 50 people.
Right.
One more. We have Linda. She had her hand up. Then we'll be back to you. Yep, go ahead, Linda.
Oh, I just was going to follow on and wonder how a question could be crafted to gauge the level of awareness of our residents as to the really special resource and ecosystem that we live in. And you had mentioned that might be something that could be added on into this survey.
Absolutely. So right now, let's stick with this. We're kind of on a running theme of a potentially a new question, and then why don't we get back to you on that one? We're talking about gauging the interest from the community that responds to the survey regarding their knowledge of volunteer efforts under the supervision of the forester / other ways in which they can be stewards. So
there's Carmel Cares.
for sure, right? Exactly. But just kind of whether we're trying to figure out how to get, should we make a question in this survey that asks, like, hey, are you aware and are you interested in engaging? And then Donna, I'll just go over to you.
Yeah, I'm volunteering at the theater at 5:45, and I just left my volunteer job at the benefit shop.
It's a great performance.
No, Carmel Cares. We don't have to recreate the wheel. Dale is in the community, and Dale is helping every group here, including the symphony and the women's club, and the list goes on. And then the city is also working on a volunteer program. I don't know that this is the right place to put it, because then you have to have another link to somebody or somewhere. Our city hall has to field questions. This is for the master plan, and those volunteer opportunities in 10 years will be different than what they are today. I think you're addressing the big picture. Volunteerism today is now the present picture, and there are many groups, the Rotaries and Lions, who are doing things. So I think the people really do know, and I think they, if you just read the weekly or the Pine Cone, who's out there doing what and who needs a volunteer. So that, and I'm very much on volunteerism, but that might not be something we want to put another link and another question. We simply are trying to come up with a good plan for 20 years. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to expand on that just really quick.
I would sure like to say something.
I wouldn't recommend the volunteer question in this community survey. When we execute projects today or after the master plan happens, we need to take advantage to the maximum extent on all the volunteer programs we already have. I don't know if we need a question.
Sounds fine.
So I would recommend no question, yes, use volunteers as much as possible. Thanks.
Okay, and I know Commissioner Burling had something to say, so yes.
Yeah, I do, and it's relation, Mike, you and I might not agree, and Melanie, you're a latecomer compared, but we did not have that many trees during the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, and the trees were not, the pines were not native all the way down to the ocean. I lived on Santa Rita, just up from the Forest Theater, and there were probably 3 pines on the whole street, and then there were plenty of oaks. The oaks were natural too. So the idea of having a Monterey pine forest is, given the issues with the Monterey pines, but we can have a variety. And we don't have to stick with exactly what some of the people think our history is. We want to be a treed town, but we can have lots of different things. And hearing people describe how it was, at least the part I lived in and fooled around in, was not, we had a view. From Santa Rita, we had a view of the ocean. So much, not totally covered by higher upper canopy trees.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Burling. So back to this question of whether or not we want to survey those that are taking a survey of their level of current volunteer engagement or not. Is there, there's mix, it seems.
I think we should skip it.
Linda's hand popped back up, so Linda, yes?
Okay, I don't mean to be contentious, but
okay.
I just want to read you an advertisement in 1903 that was in the San Francisco Chronicle. Carmel-by-the-Sea, a pine forest, alongside Carmel Mission, facing a mile of white sand beach on the sheltered side of the Monterey Peninsula, 3 miles south from Monterey Station. Hotel rates at Pine Inn, $8 per week and upward. Tents, same rate for rent as Catalina Tent City. Boarding houses, $4.50 per week and upward for board. Special rates for school teachers and ministers. For particulars, address J.F. Devendorf, manager, Monterey, or 330 Pine Street, San Francisco. So Carmel had 400 acres of Monterey pine forest in 1903. And yeah, it's ebbed and flowed over time, for sure. There were times when there were more or less, but we always have been a pine forest. That's just needs to make that clear.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that fun little bit of history. Didn't hear anything about whether or not there was any level of community volunteerism in that, though. So if we can just stick to what we're trying to do, which is accomplish this list of questions, so that, you know, based off of, again, what we're here for is to review and approve these final questions, determine the start and end date, which is going to be brought back to commission if I don't have any other comments, and then provide guidance about whether the paper copies should be available. We've got a list of questions. I'm not hearing enough interest in the specific to volunteerism, so we're going to leave that out at this point, but I certainly hope that we can, you know, work on that at a later date. And if everyone, let's see.
I have a couple questions I'd like to bring up.
Like bring it, I'm going to bring it entirely back to commission only, so I'm closing public comment. Bring it back to commission for last discussion points, and it sounds like Commissioner Burling has one.
I do.
More.
I first want to mention that I have that ad for 1903 too, which Devendorf and Powers wrote because that's the way they want it. There were no trees near the mission, by the way. But anyway, 2 other questions that I wondered about, because we're talking about the master plan for this, is would we want to ask the question, what number and description of trees should be suggested for each lot? So right now, it's suggested, not mandatory, to have 3 upper canopy trees and 1 lower canopy tree, or 1 tree. And
Density, yeah.
I think most people would like to not have that many upper canopy trees, but do we even want to have that in there, or should people be?
Quite frankly, that question scares me, because that should be based on the science and based on an ordinance.
No,
or
it
based
has a
on,
lot to do with what people want their city to be like. It's not a science matter.
Okay, and you had another comment?
Okay.
Well, my other one you guys will love, I'm sure.
That's why I'm not on the commission.
But Sarah, wait, I just want to make sure I understand your suggestion, which is, right now, every time we look at tree proposals, we always look at the number of trees on the lot and how this particular tree sits relative to the recommendations.
The recommended density, yes.
Per lot.
Yes.
And that, in the urban forest master plan, that will be a part of the plan, right?
Yeah.
To be adopting or updating
And
those.
every ordinance, everything is going to be looked at, so.
The plan will
But
set the
who's looking at
guidelines
changing?
for the ordinance updates after.
So it would be relevant if you said, you know, I don't know, an average 4,000 square foot lot. Presently in Carmel, the ordinance is to have X number of trees, this many, that many.
Do you think it should change or something?
Do you
like
think that, kind of like your questions 1 and 2, right? Should this change? Should it stay the same? Should
I think it's important.
it's actually more, it's actually a better question than number 2, to be honest, which is, question number 2 was the broad, question number 2 was
Okay.
that we have 36% canopy.
Uh-huh.
It's almost
more specific.
It would almost be, you know, reduce this tree requirement, maintain
It
this
would
tree
be,
requirement, or increase this tree requirement.
That's a good idea. How do you guys feel?
I think it's a good question. It's more specific. I wasn't thrilled with this 36%. It's too general, and I'm trying to figure out
Doesn't know
what kind of trees are we talking about here. I think it would be better to drill down some on it and to get down to a lot size. I think it would be a good question.
Brian?
Could you?
I think we're climbing a little down in the weeds here on stuff, and I'm a little concerned that people are gonna get confused because not everyone even understands what the requirement is.
They can skip it. Well, if we say what the requirement is, and then is this what you like, or would you like it changed?
The problem is so I've got a 4,000 square foot lot. Another person's got a 6,000 square foot lot. Another person's got an 8,000 square foot lot.
It's different
and all the requirements are different based on
most
your lot
of the lots in
size.
Carmel really are 40 by 100, but there are plenty who aren't.
There are a lot of 6,000, 8,000, 10,000
Yeah, mine's
square foot
bigger
lots.
too, but
There's just a lot out there, and I think if we try and climb this down in the weeds.
It's part of the master plan, Brian, and a lot of people want it changed, and we need to consider that. Let's see what people feel about it.
I just think it's a complex question to ask. That's all I'm saying. If you want to put it in there and make it, I just think people are going to go, well, I don't know, what does this mean to me?
So do you keep it more vague and
They-
as long,
I
what,
think
with
if
the
you-
existing ordinance satisfy whatever it is?
We could just talk about this, the city ordinance for, we could say an average, or, for a minimum, for a 4,000 square foot lot, recognizing some people have more than that, or less, maybe. But for an average 4,000 square foot lot, the present city ordinance is 4 trees. If this is 3 upper canopy and 1 lower canopy, right? Is that something you'd like to see reduced, maintained, or increased, right? I think that's actually a better question than the
I think so
canopy
too.
question.
And it's useful to look at your yard, at your garden, and see where do I stand?
Well,
To just add relative to what you should have, or what we would like for you to have.
Supporting it, didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
No, I interrupted, sorry, please.
No, that was all. I just think that it's useful. It's practical information that people can look at their own garden and assess where they are.
So do we get
relative
rid
to what the city
of
wants?
number 2? That's my question.
Two is important.
2 is the entire city,
The
right?
entire
It's
city.
not just your
Public, private, all trees.
So it sounds to me like this is a question that gets inserted here, perhaps after 2, or or maybe even further. Hang on a second.
I would put it where you're asking about,
Would you plant a tree
trees
on your
on
property?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Then make them more or less, whatever it is. So that kind of plugs
It goes in there.
after 5, or somewhere in between 5 and 6, right?
Yeah.
I think I would put it before, my recommendation would be to put it before 5.
Before 5.
Yeah.
That's good because it lays the basis, right?
Yeah.
Do we have the correct wording on that?
Kelly, your wording was good.
I can, yeah.
Nova, do you have it?
I'll help Kelly.
Yeah.
For a typical 4,000 square foot lot in the city of Carmel-by-the-Sea, the current requirement is 3 upper canopy and 1 lower canopy. Is that right, Justin?
It's the recommendation. We want to be sure.
Oh, the current
it's
recommendation,
mandatory.
good, okay, that's good. The current recommendation is 3 upper and 1 lower canopy trees. Should this increase, decrease, or stay the same?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And then I think
That's
we
generic
should-
enough to
And we
get the
should
message.
explain what a lower canopy and what an upper canopy are, just so we could maybe just give a little
Okay.
example of
And
that.
I think we should then also have a response there where the last response, it should be reduce, maintain, increase, but there should also be a response where I am not a property owner in Carmel. Like people, you should DQ those people, right?
Okay.
Well, that will
But
help
it's
us,
something- but is it-
that will
is
help
it-
us too
it's not-
at the very
Is
end.
it a recommendation or is it a requirement?
It's a requirement.
It's a requirement, it's not a recommendation.
City ordinance, right? Isn't
I
it an
mean, when we go
ordinance?
through and say, like, you've gotta have this many, it's not a recommendation, we're telling you, you gotta
No,
put that many trees.
it's a recommendation.
So you recommend it and I say, I don't like your recommendation, I'm not gonna plant it.
Let's just make sure that what we put in the survey is the actual verbiage in the ordinance, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just make sure it's clear there, and then that should satisfy that. And it sounded like Sarah decided to hold her last comment for another day. So we have quickly some work to do because we're not done. We've come up with this final list of questions, which was our review and approve. So we need to go ahead and have a vote from the commissioners to approve. Is that our process right here?
It says recommended.
I
Bob?
was,
So we can put
I was writing down consensus direction on each one.
Okay, is that
So then I
satisfactory?
don't think we need to go back and vote
Yeah.
unless you want to
Good for
stay
you.
here for
Okay.
a while.
That's good. I just making sure. I just want to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Technically correct, I don't know.
And so we did not determine the start and the end date of the survey. So we've got to do this. Let's make sure that we get through the things that we're supposed to do here today. So the start and end date of this survey,
How soon can it be out?
what do you guys think here quickly?
We need at least
I
3
think-
weeks to get.
Yeah, I'd
a
give
good
it 30
survey.
days, once you have.
That would be
that,
better.
right?
30 days total for a survey to be out there?
Yeah.
You think that's satisfactory?
Sure,
People that come in and out of town? Yep.
30 days is a long time.
I'd
You
go
really
with
don't have this thing out
You'd
there
like
for 3
longer?
months.
45.
That's okay. I mean, it does take a while.
Okay, 45? Agreed.
45, so that start and the end, the start date. I mean, really, Tom, I mean, in terms of this being turned around, how far out is it? Is it going to be 2 weeks, a week, or well, now that you've
That
got
we
the final verbiage and recommendations, once it's tweaked, et cetera?
It's up to Commissioner Brzezowski's coding.
I think it will take,
No,
I mean, it depends on who they have coding this, but
Right.
it needs to be debugged and before it's released, so
Okay.
I would say.
Why don't, can we say as soon as possible release it, so a week or 2 weeks,
And then
something like
45
that.
days.
And then 45 days,
We'll
it'll
have
be open for
paper
whatever
copies
day.
Got it.
and have them different
Paper
places.
copies is the next topic.
And so providing guidance regarding whether paper copies should be available. So does anyone have some strong feelings against paper copies being available? And then if they are available, they're available here at the city, I take it? And
Lots of different, we could put them
I
in
think they
different
have to
places,
be
post
Go to
office
the
here,
library, the post office.
library, post office.
Just like where the normal
And
postings
we
are.
can
we
get
have
'em and
Public
print 'em
Works,
out.
City Hall, Library, Post Office.
I think the one thing is somehow we just have to clarify, like, there should be demographics, like, beyond just saying who they are. They should have a name, address, like, we can talk about how how we capture demographics at the end on this,
I
Tom,
don't-
but any survey would normally have that, even if it's anonymous. It's just for the when the data comes back, so you can sort it.
Mike he didn't say anything, he didn't really come and do anything, but Melanie was great, but.
What did Linda say?
nothing, don't worry about it. We're just,
But for paper copies, you just want to make sure that you don't get, 50 all of a sudden show up, right? Like
From the same
completed.
person?
Uh-huh.
so
Oh,
we'll
shoot.
include then a final page that in the paper surveys that are going to have what information is required. What is it? What information would be required?
It would normally be like, the basic, like age, sex, just the typical demographics you'd put on the end of a survey.
Okay.
And they're not name specific, so it's, but it would be, I think it would be useful to have, the only other one that wouldn't be like in the typical demographic set would be length of time as a resident of Carmel. That might be useful for you to see.
Any other thoughts around this for paper copies? Staff feel like.
Where should they be dropped off? Here or at City Hall only, or here Public Works, or how?
I think we should work up a list of where they can be dropped off.
Yeah, I think on the form itself, we'll say,
okay.
please drop this off, and I like to say Public Works or
And
City
Public
Hall.
Works.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that would
You need to
avoid
limit
any
the number.
problems.
Yeah.
Pick them up in various locations so they can, for ease, but turn them into Public Works.
Yeah. Or City Hall.
Well,
Or City Hall, right?
Yeah,
Because someone's gonna have to input all that data manually.
and maybe at City Hall, they could have a little note.
So do you feel like you've got the guidance on that?
giving.
Do you feel like we provided guidance?
You provided guidance,
We
yes.
provided
very
guidance.
helpful.
That's how I feel.
Guidance has been provided. So that means
I thought the
that
field
we
questions was 1
actually
through
hit
4.
our
Yes,
3.
we're done.
Are there any closing remarks from the commission? Anything?
Yes, I want to thank,
Or
Staff member Ford.
the committee?
I want to thank Staff Member Ford for his outstanding work on this, and all the commissioners and members of the Forest and Tree Committee for including the public. Thank you so much for your sacrifice and the work that you do on behalf of our city.
Well, with that, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good job.
Are you gonna take these?
Yeah, okay.
So I do want to tell you guys that what she read in 1903 is a